Brooks waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone!
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Corral on 2nd and 15 as they're chopping down on his legs, and then they take him down high as well. Ika finished it.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Looking for Brooks in the corner. Got it! Touchdown, Alabama!
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Tim Johnson has time. Here comes the pressure. Lets it go. It is caught! Jermaine Jenkins! 28-yard strike!
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. We're going to try to actually talk some football today. Yes, we'll look at an opinion from someone who covers the Oregon Ducks in the Pac-12, a good friend of ours, James Crepea of the Oregonian. He'll join us today. Aaron Suttles on Alabama. And then also Sam Weber from OpenDoors.com that opened a new NIL collective with Baylor, in fact, effective today. John Machota from Oxnard, Paul's Top 5. But that voice you heard to start the show, the great, now late, Vin Scully, who passed away last night. He was the voice of not just the Los Angeles Dodgers, but the Dodgers' voice in many different ways. Hall of Famer, as soothing a voice as you could possibly hear. And, you know, I didn't get in the business because of Vin Scully. I didn't get in the business because of Harry Carey. I didn't get in the business for Bill Harwell. But I got in the business because I enjoyed Howard Cosell back in the day when I was about that age where it mattered. But those guys obviously had an influence on wanting to do play-by-play. And I know we're a college football show, and we're going to get into that a lot. But I just wanted to start off with a guy that meant so much to all sorts of people when it comes to broadcasting and delivering a game into your radio, your ears, and also television.
You know, when I got the MLB package on DirecTV so I could watch the Red Sox a lot. But what I found myself doing a lot when the Red Sox were over was flipping over to the games I knew that Vin was doing and watching Vin and just listening to Vin do the games. And I would compare it to like in the 1500s when a poet would go and do poetry just in front of the king, in front of just off of his head, out of his memory. The way that he would describe things and his mastery of the English language and putting it to baseball was sheer poetry. And you'd watch it, and then his research was second to none. He would say things that you'd be like, man, how do you
storytelling?
Yeah, how do you know this? How do you know this about the guys on the other team?
Yeah,
I mean, you're always with the Dodgers. It was so good, and he's the gold standard. He is the absolute gold standard for play-by-play announcers.
The Kirk Gibson home run, the Sandy Koufax perfect game, the many different things, World Series, All-Star games, and not just Dodgers, but Major League Baseball in general.
Yeah, he was an all-time great, and I enjoyed listening to him when I was out in L.A. a few years ago. I just wanted to make sure that I watched and listened to anything I could that was specific to that market, and especially the Dodgers and Vin Scully. I can't just listen to this whenever I want. This wasn't like now you just pop on some app and you listen to whatever you want to, pretty much whenever you want to, wherever you want to. I kind of had to be in California to listen to Vin Scully call a game live. So. I'll always remember doing that pretty intentionally and enjoying the heck out of it, and just enjoy hearing him on so many different calls over the years and videos and packages and everything else. His voice is very soothing, and yeah, you're right. He was a great storyteller, had an innate ability to be able to kind of weave through not only the game but also the poetry side of things as well. So not too many like him. A lot of, broadcasters, there's just a lot of them, and you can't really At least I can't anymore at this point go like, oh, yeah, that guy and that guy and that guy are kind of like the beacons of broadcasting. I don't really know. Like, I don't know. Is it Joe Buck? Is it, you know what I mean? Who is it? And I know there's up-and-comers, and that's not to be disrespectful, but, yeah, the days of, like, it's Harry Carey and it's Vin Scully and it's like those guys, that's, well and over.
You know what's interesting to me is that now you have and a lot of it is social media and people's opinions. They have their opinions, they have their feelings, whether it's about Paul, you, Craig, me, whoever, us. But it's a lot easier to say things than it was before. And you could say something, you just said it yourself or your buddies who are watching the game. But I do even see now where people just like they criticize broadcasters. And I understand if you don't like somebody who's a broadcaster, just don't watch or listen to them. I don't remember that. I mean, Cosell was someone that was polarizing. He was not afraid to give an opinion. He was not afraid to go against the grain. And people may not have liked him, but I never heard, of course, again, different.
But you
didn't hear people complain about Harry Carey or is it Harwell or Vin Scully or names like that as you went through this Buck's dad. You didn't hear that.
No.
How would you have?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing. Like you're talking about comparing paintings when one artist had black and white and the other artist has every freaking color imaginable, and they've like created new colors. I mean, a guy can utter 2 words on a broadcast, and Joe in Spiegelville can tell the entire world if they happen to catch his tweet that you suck or you're great.
Yeah,
like
that's a great
so.
point.
I mean, what were you going to hear that from? The guy that you saw at school or work like hours and hours later the next day, if you even remembered to bring it up at that point? And did you even both happen to hear it at the same time? You know what I mean? Like now, oh, I missed that. What was it? Where can I find it? Boom, here we go. Oh, yeah, that did suck. Boom, ding, done. And that's it. So, yeah, you're talking about 2 different worlds nowadays.
Yeah, so, again, R.I.P., and yet long live the legacy of the great, the soothing voice, I think is a great way to put Vin Scully.
You want to know how good Vin Scully was? I saw when Bob Costas had his first round of show on HBO back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He did an interview with Vin Scully and Ray Charles because when Ray Charles wanted to hear something that he thought was awesome, he listened to Vin Scully. Yeah. Ray Charles may be one of the top, most talented musicians who's ever walked the face or will walk the face of this earth. When he wanted to hear something that inspired him that wasn't music, it was Vin Scully.
Yep, that's a great point, Paul. And again, there's so many great names, and he was one of them, and maybe the best ever. That's arguable because there have been so many along the way.
He's my favorite, just his voice and the way he talked, and yeah, I enjoyed him a lot.
We will today at 3:30 again look at Alabama. Most likely are going to be ranked number 1 across the board with most of the polls. I want to start looking ahead to that, even though there's still always discussion about who's going to do what conferences will either move, add, or possibly lose more. In fact, I'll just say this, man. Speaking of social media. There are catfights among even those in the profession about various reporting or columns or writing, and I hate that. I really do. I don't like what I see, but I also know that people are defensive, and some people are trying to say, wait a minute, what did you say last week when it comes to the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or the whatever else the Big 10 or SEC or ACC might do? But it's kind of ugly. It's a turf war. And I got a text him away here that said, hey, have you seen what Jason Shear, our buddy from Arizona Wildcat Authority, he's firing back at a few people because they fired at him. And we're getting into that, and it's really, really, really tense right now with who's right, who has the right information, and about whatever happens with some of the schools in the Pac-12, how much they can get now, what a former AD at Utah said. And also, by the way, it appears, unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, Levi, Paul, and you guys have read that the Big 12, it does appear as if they will be getting more, whatever that more might be, that there was a time, there's no way they're more valuable when it comes to television, grant of rights, media, TV, whatever else. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't think they would. I mean, the tempered part of that is that they probably are not getting as much of a raise had the conference not fallen apart last year, but they're still getting more, which is good. Like, they're able to grow a little bit. And, as opposed to, no, this conference is going to be a $9 million a year TV. It's going to be just like the AAC. That's what it's going to be.
Or like what everyone thought the Big 12 was going to be. Yeah. Remember that number? We saw $15 million?
Yeah.
What are you basing this off of?
It's a column that was written by John Wilner on the former Utah AD. I read part of it. Some of it, again, you can't read some of them because they're paywall, whatever it's called.
Paywall.
But there were, and Brian Etheridge was telling me a little bit about how it does appear as if the Big 12 will probably end up with more per team, per distribution, per year, whatever the estimations are. And even some of those estimations aren't even available yet. But Jason Scheer was also responding because there have been some fireballs shot his direction and grenades thrown his direction, kind of like grenades that maybe Kliavkoff was talking about, except he was talking about from other members of the media.
Yeah. I think it's great to have more information out there to digest. I do think there's a lot of people that are, kind of touchy at the moment. I like that others are willing to fire back no matter how many followers that person might have or whatever the case may be, and vice versa. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Hopefully, though, they don't mix opinion with facts, and they can use facts whenever they're armed with those first. And then if it delves into the opinion side of it, then, yeah, go forward with that as well. But, I'm always good to welcome in new numbers and new facts, and I know it's all very confusing to people. It's very confusing to me as well. I don't like numbers. Like, they don't make sense to me most of the time. And so, they never have. And so when people start getting into, like, percentages and the rating of this and all that, like, my head starts to kind of swim, and I have to trust other people. But I'm always fascinated to see it. And, if that's the case, that the Big 12's looking at earning a bit more, I think that's just what everybody's been, kind of saying over here. And, I'm not Mr. Big 12, although, yeah, if I had a preference, okay, one has to live, F, marry, kill kind of thing. Sorry, Pac-12, you're done. You're bye-bye. You're not living. But, that's just, if John Wilner had to pick, guess what? Big 12, you're dead too. So It's just, it is what it is, but it's where we live. But I'm not rooting for the Pac-12, but it's starting to get kind of the point where it does seem like the tides are turning to where, it's like, we're going to take you. No, we're going to take you. And now it's like, now you just want to kill each other. Like, now somebody has to die. Whereas before, maybe everybody could have gone their separate ways ultimately. Now it's like, that probably could happen, but people want blood because there's been so much back and forth trash talk. So, yeah, that's been interesting to see. And I know I can't really go off anything more than just I've gone with this feeling, but I just look at the Pac-12 and kind of the way it's set up, especially the flimsiness of Oregon and Washington, the fact that we have no assurance that they're going to sign anything remotely long-term here in the near future, whereas with the Big 12, they all have at least a couple years. Like, that's been my thing with the Big 12 all along, and while I've asked everybody that we've had on pretty much of, do you think it's better or worse to have the contract coming up right now, which is what the Pac-12 has? And what I've kind of seen is the Pac-12 stuff has bled into the Big 12 stuff. So they're comparing right now what they're worth. The Big 12 still has 2 years. So, like, who knows what we're talking about next summer? If Oklahoma State runs off and rips off a national title or something, which I know is low percentage odds, but if that were to happen, or Baylor or whatever, that kind of would change things a little bit. Because all of a sudden you'd have like, whoa, one of your brands just won a freaking national title. And I know basketball doesn't play as much into the equation, but if, Baylor goes and wins another national title or Kansas wins another national title, that's just another feather in your cap. So I think that's why I've viewed the Big 12 as being in a better situation, is because as much as it feels like they have to panic and do something immediately, I think that's just stemming from the Pac-12's feeling of they have to do something and pretty much do it right now. And so everybody's got that feeling of like, oh my gosh, we've got to jump or we're going to, perish. But the Big 12 just needs to kind of like take a deep breath and realize you don't have to do something by tomorrow. Right. You have some time to kind of like see this thing out.
And so really the Pac-12, it has a more urgency, obviously,
Yes.
but they don't have to react today either.
No.
It's just like, again, it's that instant gratification. We want an answer right now.
The other thing I think people need to remember is, and we've heard this from a couple of different analysts, if you ask the students, the fans, the alumni, or maybe the alumni that don't give millions of dollars, those alumni, the regular alumni, the Joe Schmoes of the alumni world, at Arizona, at Colorado, at Utah probably, they would all say, let's go to the Big 12 right now. Like if you ask them, like
some number of them would, yeah.
So that you probably have the majority of those people going, let's get out of this because we're sick of what's been going on. We're sick of the rest. We're sick of the network not working out right. The writing's on the wall. This isn't the conference. If you're Colorado, this isn't the conference we joined anymore. That we left to join. We were better in the Big 12 anyway. All those kind of things that fans say, but administrators don't see, like, all those complaints that you have are very small on their blips on their radar.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And so
you almost wish, what would happen if the fans made the decision?
Big 12's winning that. I'm sorry. They're winning that. And, I know that Wilner in particular has made comments of, like, there's modest differences between the fandoms or whatever. I don't know. The Big 12 seems to be getting on his and others' nerves pretty easily. And I can tell you, Pac-12 fans.
On theirs.
Yeah, and vice versa. But I've seen some Pac-12 fans throw it back as well. But, yeah, that's one of the other things that I said, I believe, last week is part of the reason why my hunch just goes to the Big 12 is not like I'm a Big 12 fan. It's just I know Big 12 fans, and, yeah, I would put them up pride-wise versus Pac-12 fans. But I know that's also not what's bringing in the contract. Right. The differences are modest and all of that. But there's also, like, fun with numbers going on, too. Is you don't always know exactly what's a real stat or what's kind of twisted and what's kind of, whatever. Because I saw, in particular, there was one about, stadium sizes. And then, on the surface, you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, that's not much of a difference. Well, then you break it down. Well, then, did you add the 4 new schools in? Well, that affects the percentage, and you got to kind of make sure that the numbers are what they are. So, based on all that, yeah, it seems as though the Big 12 would have a modest advantage in whatever kind of category you're throwing up there, but it's still an advantage. And, again, they're still sitting there with a couple years to build onto that, and who knows what the landscape looks like. So, I think the Big 12's in a stronger position. I've said that. I've maintained that. And I also think the fact that, you've got not only the next couple years, but unless there's something brewing behind the scenes where the Big Ten's on like a back channel to TCU or something, it appears the Big 12's pretty much stable. Whereas with the Pac-12, again, as soon as the Big Ten calls, and I know I just said that, like, hey, if the Big Ten to call Kansas, but there's no indication that that's going on. We know that there's at least a couple of schools out west that are in some sort of text chat, at the very least.
I agree with you on that, but I just think that there was so much rush for information and what we thought. I now look around of who in the Big Ten, who other than Notre Dame would be added to the Big Ten, even including Oregon and Washington, that would make them stronger.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
nobody.
That make them stronger? Yeah, probably not anybody.
Nobody would.
But I don't know though, because I think if you were to add a combination of schools, then yeah, you could. If you were to add like Clemson, Florida State, and Oregon, you're going up.
I'm not looking at the ACC. I'm looking at the Big Ten, trying to look at teams if they were to look at the Pac-12 and or the Big 12. You look at anyone that they could pick from, anybody from those two conferences right now, with all due respect to all of them, who among those schools would actually add more to what they're going to get already?
Yeah, and I get that, but that's if it's strictly about value. And I know that's what we've been pounded over the head for like the last month is it's about who adds value, who adds value, who adds value. But you also can't look away from the strategic side of it and the fact that you'd have a couple more schools out in the Northwest and you'd have the entire coast north to south with U.S., if you were to do it a certain way, or if you were to go east. So, yeah, there's nobody that's going to add value ultimately, but if you can look at college football in 5 years and you have this conference that maybe everybody's making a couple $1 million less, but you now have Oregon, Washington, Florida State, and Clemson, like that's a stronger conference. You might only be making $108 million versus $115 million, but at that point, you pretty much control everything.
If it is about territory, then why would anyone not look inside the state of Texas?
Well, that's what I just got done saying. How do we not know that the Big Ten's not on a back channel to TCU right now?
Or just as it's school,
or just in general,
go ahead.
I mean, that's what is the wild card is that. Like, we certainly don't know all the information.
We didn't know about USC and UCLA. We didn't know about Texas and Oklahoma.
So who are we to say that we know for sure that there's not some conversation going on? But, like, if you were to look at it on that way, unless there is something in the Big 12 brewing, we openly know that there's at least that thought going on in the Pac-12 with up to 4 schools potentially. So, yeah, that's a big difference to me right there is kind of the flirtation factor.
Sergeant Pickles 13, we all just want the chance to play top-level ball. ESPN/Fox overlords have us killing each other instead of them for causing all of this. That's from Sergeant Pickles. Thank you very much for your information.
That's deep, Sergeant Pickles.
Yeah, it's very, very
You're
smart.
right, too. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
And again, there's so much more that we have our opinion. Obviously, the chat room is filled with opinions, and obviously those who write for different conferences, from different teams in different conferences, from different teams in same conferences have theirs, and that's healthy. We will have today a good friend of ours, James Crepia. He writes for the Oregonian. James and I had a conversation, I think it was 2 or 3 nights ago. He doesn't see a lot of bright clouds either for either conference. He understands brands and all that. And he has a couple of what might not be popular thoughts about a lot of teams, or 2 conferences. 2 conferences that are the ones that are trying to figure themselves out, although right now the Big 12 at least knows who they are and where they're going, although there could be some changes as well. Again, we're here tonight until 6 o'clock. We are loaded up in the studio today. Faith is here. Also Levi, Emery, Jack, and Garrett. And 365 Sports, Sikkim 365 Radio. A couple of other notes. Craig, right before we went on the air, it's an NFL note. Well, I want to get to this one. Dr. Linda Livingstone, the president at Baylor, who, of course, remember, is the one that introduced Brett Yormark at the Big 12 Media Days. She was the one that introduced him because she's a part of what is the Big 12, basically the governors. She has now been named, the NCAA Board of Governors named her as basically the figurehead. She is now the one as board chair. I had somebody send me a text that, is that what you want to do, is be a part of an organization that everyone thinks might be the worst sports organization in America? I think I get that point. But I think it says quite a bit about Dr. Linda Livingstone. She's now at the very top of the Big 12, other than the commissioner. She's now the board of the NCAA Transformational Committee, the Board of Governors, excuse me. I mean, they're trying, they've waited too long, but she now is basically leading 2 of the biggest things you could possibly lead in her position, not to mention she runs Baylor University as well. Or I know the Board of Regents, but she's the president at Baylor.
Well, if people knew the hornet's nest that she walked into when she got the job here of disorganization and finger pointing and non-solution solutions, and how she has streamlined that organization, they would understand what she's worth to everyone who wants to hire her to do something. She is a very strong leader. She's no nonsense, but she's calm. She's not reactionary to anything. Very measured responses to things. Very in the now, and not like the fighting what you have to do at every university is, when I went to this school in 1962, this is how it was. Well, pal, it's not 1962 anymore. It's 2022. And I would say that's her strongest.
1962, first of all, a woman wouldn't run anything.
Yeah, well, especially not at Baylor, too. Yeah. But, yeah, it's just those things that you just said, that she deals with so well.
Yeah, it's a positive sign of the times, and also just a testament to the job that she's done. I mean, it really has been, almost miracle work, not only her but many others around here the last several years, and it's been interesting to see her star rise. And, I had that thought, though, I have to admit, of like, yay, I'm the captain of the Titanic as it's sinking halfway down into the Atlantic Ocean is kind of how it feels. But, I'm sure there's more to it that I'm not thinking about. And there's more to come that I'm not thinking about. And there's a design in mind or a plan in mind for where this all goes that I'm not thinking about. But, yeah, it very much feels like, hey, we're taking on water. You're the captain now. Go ahead and try to save us all. And you know what, though? If somebody could, it probably would be her. She would have known to turn earlier from the iceberg, or whatever. But, congratulations to her. That's very cool.
I just got a text from the 213. It's too long for me to read right now, but he said, I'm sorry, I don't like it when snakes invite me to their party. Speaking of what the NCAA and Dr. Livingstone there to perhaps turn the corner with them, along with others, by the way.
I think you're going too high by giving them snakes. Snakes have a plan.
Yeah, they're calculated.
The NCAA.
They're actually, you fear them.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody really fears the NCAA at this point. Honestly.
From 832, this is about the Pac-12, USC and UCLA. Why is no one talking about Ohio State in this who drove USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, since their administrators used to work with the Ohio State administrators? Excuse me.
Oh,
it wasn't Kevin Warren driving the bus. He just got lucky to be at Ohio State because of Ohio State pushing the bus.
Well, yeah, and USC also wanted to do it. I mean, they're the ones who stepped out. Like I think. There's a lot of finger pointing of who's to blame and all this stuff, but I think Ohio State's probably a little down the list. I'm sure it's, the Big Ten and USC.
Haven't heard anything from Ohio State, really, have you?
I think it's because we're not talking about Kevin Eltife either. At Texas, we're not talking about the real power brokers necessarily. We're talking about the guys who are hired and paid big money to be the figureheads, so they get talked about rather than the real guys pulling the levers or real gals behind the scenes that are really pulling the levers. The fact that we just talked about Linda Livingstone's an outlier to that. But yeah, we're going to talk about the commissioner, not the big, powerful booster behind the scenes,
Or the guys who hired him.
Or the guys who hired him, or the people in administration that otherwise we wouldn't really know about. Like, those are the types of the cats, the Gene Smiths of the world, the Kevin Eltifes, those types that are really making things happen or not happen, and they just kind of live behind the scenes, and, that's I think that's part of the reason why.
Garrett, not yet, but get the Brett McMurphy text or tweet ready for me. But this is from the 864. In regards to the comment about USC regretting moving to the Big Ten, that's full of BS. What people don't realize that USC is a private university, we do, that is financially self-sustaining. We understand that. The Pac-12 commissioner is a total retard. I can't use it. I just was reading it. I'm sorry. Golly.
You really
that's from the 864. Let me tell you something. First of all, you don't need to use that language. I read it because it was right here in front of me. But we didn't say that, but you're right. George Kliavkoff did mention he thought USC and UCLA already were regretting their decision.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why when I kind of went off on him yesterday and didn't buy what he was selling as far as the comments about the Big 12 and all that. When you're sitting there talking out of one side of your mouth like you're tough, and I understand you're defending your turf, but the one who did all the damage and broke your windows and set your house on fire is just sitting over there laughing, and you're not even looking in their direction for whatever reason that is. And that's kind of part of why I just felt the way I felt towards Kliavkoff.
All right, here's a Brett McMurphy tweet from earlier today. I actually texted him. I said, where did this information come from as far as the data? 6 schools projected. This is based on the college football index, the power rankings and stuff. 6 schools based on where they're rated, who they play, favored to win every single regular season game. This doesn't mean that any of them will run the table. Air Force, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Utah. The asterisk next to Ohio State and Alabama, all of them, they're projected to be double-digit favorites in all 12 games. Right now, based on just now before any games are played.
I got to look at Air Force's schedule.
Alabama, of course, right now ranked number 1. Georgia, they don't play Alabama. Unless they did, they would play them, of course, in the SEC championship game if they get there again. There's one game that Georgia's not a double-digit favorite, based again on this power index and stuff like that, which is fun, is Georgia's a 9-point pick to beat Mississippi State. A 9-point favorite to beat Mississippi State. It makes me want to go look at Georgia's schedule as far as the draw they have compared to others that they play in the SEC and the East Division.
It would be hilarious to see Air Force run the table, and kind of awesome.
You might.
But that means they favor to beat Boise State and Colorado.
Boise's not. We got visions of Oklahoma, Boise in our heads still, and that's not what's going on there.
No, but that's Nevada, Wyoming. That's who's on their schedule. They don't have a murderer's row, but Colorado. Again, not a murderer's row.
Yeah, the Army,
Air Force.
No,
they have Army. They have Army and Navy.
Army's not always. I don't know where they are compared to where Navy won last year, beat Army at the end of the year. All right, when we come back, Aaron Suttles, theathletic.com, he covers Alabama. His thoughts about the Crimson Tide and what Nick Saban had to say about last year's team compared to this year's team. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and also 365 Sports.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
The eventual preseason top 25s will start to come out. There is the AP, the media poll, that eventually there'll be the coaches poll, among others as well. And there some of the online various websites, whoever have their top 25. It looks like Alabama's going to pretty much be not unanimous, but they're going to be a part of the number one across the board in many, many ways. We're now joined by Aaron Suttles. TheAthletic.com covers Bama. Aaron, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I read a story earlier about Nick Saban saying something that last year's team was a rebuilding job.
Yeah, and I'm quite frankly surprised everyone is kind of taking over college football. I wrote that a couple weeks ago for The Athletic. It was a mailbag question. I don't see how it couldn't be a rebuilding year, considering everything they lost from the 2020 team. I mean, if you go back and look at how there were 6 first-round draft picks off that 2020 team they lost, they had to replace most of them on the offensive side of the ball, starting quarterback, left tackle, running back, Heisman-winning wide receiver, another first-round wide receiver. So, yeah, I think despite the fact that they won an SEC championship, despite the fact that they had a lead in the fourth quarter of the national championship, it was a rebuilding year.
Aaron, have they rebuilt the offensive line? The offensive line was, I mean, to say down year, there are a lot of fan bases that roll their eyes at it, but it was one of the things that Alabama fans, knew was kind of a weakness if they had one. Is the offensive line rebuilt? Are they better on that side of the ball now after a season?
I think it remains to be seen. I think it's the top storyline of preseason camp, which opens on Friday here at Alabama. They don't have a returning, but Evan Neal was the starting left tackle last year. He was really good, and he was the most consistent, offensive lineman they had. He's gone. So you're looking at a situation where you got 2 tackles. The right tackle was horrific by Alabama standards pretty much all year. And, you look at the spring game, and that first-team offensive line gave up 10 sacks to the first-team defense. Now, there were some guys out for the spring, but it's not a solidified unit, and I think it's whoever wins that, the tackle job, those two left and right tackle, that's where it's going to start. But it's going to be the most watched thing with Alabama this year, and I think we'll probably end up telling the tale of how good this Alabama team will be.
Aaron, what are the expectations, or what's kind of the early buzz surrounding Jahmyr Gibbs?
He's going to be real good. I think he's going to be outstanding. I think he's going to be the guy to watch. Other than Bryce Young, he's the guy to watch when Alabama's awesome. Alabama's there's 2 Heisman Trophy winners at running back, so they've had their fair share of really good runners. And I think this guy fits right into that. I'm not saying he's a Derrick Henry or Mark Ingram. He's got his own style. I think particularly he will make his mark out of the backfield as a pass receiver too, as a pass option. I think when you start looking at all the different ways he's going to affect the game, the traditional run, plus with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, he's elusive, he's quick, and he's got better than average speed. He had a 75-yard touchdown run in the spring game where he showed off that speed. I think he's going to be tremendous. I think he's probably right now one of the player that fans are really anxious to see to open the season, and you're starting to see his name pop up on Heisman odds. This is a guy that hadn't played one game for Alabama, was a transfer coming in from Georgia Tech. So despite never having played a real game for Alabama, the expectations are pretty high for him.
And being here in Texas, I remember Jace McClellan being at Alito, and I remember his recruitment and all that. Where does he kind of fit in? I know they got Gibbs, they got Sanders, but where does McClellan fit into that? How do you sort of evaluate his positioning?
I think he would have been running back 1 this year had he not gotten hurt. He got hurt last year, and that certainly – and he was limited during the spring, didn't do anything. And then they brought in Gibbs. I still think he's going to get a ton of carries. I still think he's capable of, if Jahmyr Gibbs was not here, is capable of being RB1, running back 1. And he will sort of be the guy that splits carries with Gibbs in my estimation. I think he's the next guy up, or even, the way Alabama sort of views it, I think he's a co-starter. I think you're not going to get very much drop-off when you put him in the game. They're not the same skill set, but Jace is very good in his own right and has proven that in the glimpses we got of him in his first 2 seasons. But the injury, anxious to see how he comes back from that, because that certainly was a setback last year.
Aaron, I find it funny every year. It's not like funny, giggle, but, you have teams that jump out to these early rankings when it comes to commitments, and some of them eventually end in the top 15 or 20, 25, whatever. But I did kind of notice that Alabama was just kind of treading water. Then all of a sudden, poof, all these commits coming in, and there's more to come. And they'll probably even take a couple of others that are committed elsewhere. They seem to be, as expected, like they're supposed to be good in football, that their recruiting class is shaping up pretty damn well the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they were languishing by Alabama fans. I think they were close to 50, if not in the 50s, at some point in June. And the low point was when, a 5-star player from in-state, Peter Wood, had been in Alabama lean his entire recruitment and ends up going to Clemson. And, he's got several teammates that either are committed to Alabama or are currently on Alabama's team. So losing him was probably the low point, and people started asking at that point, right? You got this new thing that coaches have to deal with, this new landscape of NIL. And it was starting to be put out there that Alabama, is this the thing that Nick Saban can't solve? Can he not solve NIL? Is he not relating to today's recruits as well? And then all of a sudden, they have caught fire, and they have gone from, near 50, but they're now the number 1 ranked class in 2023 with a long way to go. And as you mentioned, they're probably going to flip a couple guys more. They just flipped their tight end from Ohio State. They just got a 5-star running back from Florida. They got a 5-star safety from Georgia. So this class is coming together very nicely, and it's just light years from where it was a month and a half ago, and that's how quickly they got it going. It's just, as you mentioned, we sort of always overreact or prisoner of the moment to what we see, and Nick Saban and that staff to turn it around really quick with a chance to be one of their better signing classes ever.
Aaron, are you on the Will Anderson Heisman candidate train?
Yeah, I had a Heisman vote last year, and I put him number 1. I think it's a shame when you have people like Chris Russo, who's, as you guys know in your business, what he's done in his career, but that would come out and publicly say he doesn't even consider it a defensive award.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to really start looking at, and I've as a sports writer, I get to vote for several awards, and I've always questioned, do we deserve it? I mean, how seriously do we take awards when people can come out and make statements like that, and it's just, oh well, that's just the way it is. If that's the case, then just change the award and make it the best offensive player, and then create a defensive Heisman. I think he's the listen. You guys know when you cover a team, you try to do it as objectively as possible in this business, and you admit when you try to be transparent with the readers if you have any biases or if you have any blind spots, to let them know this is where a potential bias might be in my coverage. So yes, I admit I cover Will Anderson, and so I see him more frequently than other players across the country, right? But what I love in this business, and you guys probably experience a lot there with the quality of kids you have in Texas, is when a good player is a good person. Mm-hmm. And Will Anderson is as good a person as Nick Saban has had in that program. And when you throw that on top of the type of player he is, he's going to go down as one of Nick Saban's all-time best players. I think he's unbelievable. I was doing a story. I'll tell you a story real quick. I know you're running out of time.
You're good.
I wrote a story last year before the season. I worked on it, drove to Georgia, got with Will's parents, got with his high school coach. I sort of wrote that it was his 5 older sisters that sort of shaped the person and competitor he is. And Will was one of the last people I got to interview, and Alabama was still doing COVID protocol, so I had to do it over the phone. And he said, okay, I know you talked to my parents, you talked to my high school coach, my sisters. He goes, but before we do this interview, just please promise me one thing. I said, sure. He goes, don't make me better than I am. And I said, and it kind of took me by surprise, and it struck me later on. Guys, he didn't realize he was that good last year. Going into last year, which was a historic season, what turned out to be, he really didn't understand how good he was. He obviously does now when you do what he did as a sophomore, but I think he's got that mix of humility, so even the way he prepares is like an underdog mentality, because his home state, Georgia, didn't want him as much as Alabama did. It sort of played into his work ethic, his character, and now he's transitioned to be, in my opinion, the best player in college football. But he keeps that sort of mindset that he doesn't think he's that good, which makes him push himself. And now he's evolved into a fantastic leader. I just think, this is why we like college sports. Getting to cover a young man like Will Anderson. And now with NIL, he's starting to realize, how good he is by the opportunities he's been given business-wise. So he's a phenomenal football player and a phenomenal human being. His parents have done a wonderful job raising him.
Yeah, I just think it's silly you mentioned Chris Russo or anybody that says it's an offensive award, given that ask the offensive coordinators who have to plan for Will Anderson, or the ones who had to plan for Ndamukong Suh, or, Manti Te'o came in second, but who had to plan for them, and tell them he doesn't affect the game as much as a wide receiver, running back, or quarterback. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's and part of this I go back to, it's on sports writers and really any media or anybody who has a vote. It's what we can easily digest. And quarterbacks put up stats that are easily digestible. It's why anytime that there's a dual threat quarterback up for the Heisman, he wins it going away, because sports writers have a category in rushing and passing. We can't help ourselves. We go crazy. That's why we don't give love to offensive linemen. There are no easily digestible stats that are available that tell you how good an offensive lineman is, but you can't tell me that an offensive lineman is not one of the most important players on the field. I mean, as you mentioned, look at Alabama last year. That's why Bryce won it, I think, is the fact, the last week of the regular season, he gets sacked 7 times at Auburn. They barely survived, and then the very next week, he goes out and carves up the historically good Georgia defense. So, the blocking that changed in one game, you can't tell me an offensive lineman, but there are no stats that we can look at and point to say they're the best. And, look at Jonathan Taylor at Georgia last year. He was one of the best players in the country, but his stats didn't jump off because he was a nose guard. He's not in a position that's going to get a ton of stats. Mm-hmm. His value in the all-22, seeing what he does to free up Nakobe Dean and all those other linebackers at Georgia. So, yeah, I wish there were a way that we could recognize the truly greats, as you mentioned, in Ndamukong Suh, even Aiden Hudson at Michigan last year, phenomenal defensive player, and obviously Will Anderson fits into that as well.
Aaron, it's 1 month today. 1 month from today, Alabama will open up at home against Utah State, and then the week after, the big road trip to Austin to take on Texas. When I mention Alabama and Texas like it could be competitive, people around here just roll their eyes. Like they feel like Alabama's just going to be so much better. But is there a good buzz already kind of looking forward to that game and the Tide going on and taking Sark down in Austin?
I think so. As you mentioned, the coaching staff ties with Jeff Banks and Steve Sarkisian, the offensive line coach, and then the personnel. Keelan Robinson, obviously Jai Hall and Jaleel Billingsley, and the fact that it's a cool road trip, right? I mean, Austin. The last time Alabama, you guys may not know this, the last time Alabama had a true road game out of conference was in 2011 against Penn State. So, Alabama normally does its huge out-of-conference game at a neutral site, whether it's in Dallas or, Orlando, Atlanta, wherever it is, and they play a pretty marquee Power 5 opponent out-of-conference there. But the last time they played a true out-of-conference road game was against Penn State. So Alabama fans don't get very many or haven't had very many trips like this over the last decade. So there's certainly a buzz for that. And then I would say, I think Steve Sarkisian, it's yet to be written how good of a head coach he is. I think he's a phenomenal offensive coordinator. And what he did with Alabama's 2020 offense, which had a ton of weapons and he could do basically what he wanted, was pretty impressive. So I think he's anytime he's got a quarterback that can pull the trigger and he's got an offensive line that can block, he's dangerous. So Alabama's certainly respecting that matchup, but the buzz is building. I've never been to Austin before, guys, so I'm taking restaurant recommendations.
Oh, well, there's a billion of them.
Turn left or right or go straight.
Yeah.
A lot of nice little cubby holes.
You know what, Aaron? After this interview, I will text you a list of barbecue places to go instead of Franklin.
Or Tex-Mex or whatever.
Franklin's great, but you may not have time to wait in line.
Every city has what was good and popular 10, 12, 15 years ago, and it still might be, but there's a lot of newness in a lot of places, especially like in Austin and Waco, too.
You'll love the Southern Silicon Valley because that's kind of what it's – but yeah.
My wife came with me for the Cotton Bowl. We were out there for the college football semifinal. She came out. We took a day trip to Waco. So we've done Waco, and then I think she's going to come out with me early the week of the Texas game. We're going to go to San Antonio for a couple of days and then hit Austin. So we're making some little vacations around this.
Yeah, I think that one thing that SEC fans are going to absolutely love is the Austin road trip because it's just a city that's blown up and yeah, you might want a couple more days the next time you book that. So yeah, I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun and there's tons and tons. It's definitely going to be a lot busier than Waco, I'll tell you that. All due respect to where we live here, yeah.
By the way, Aaron, I'm proud like you are to be a Heisman voter, and I had Anderson in my top 3. I did too, and it wasn't even close. My question was whether or not I was going to vote him 1 or 2.
Right, and listen. The way they do I wrote about this. At least I don't even think I should have one. I'm happy to have one, and I take it very seriously. I treat it with respect to the players who play the game. But I'm watching my game every Saturday, so I'm seeing Alabama and whoever they play. And if I'm lucky, if it's an early or a super late game, I'll get either a morning or afternoon game or a late night game. So I try to watch the highlights. But you just don't get as much in the highlights. You get whatever ESPN wants you to see and whoever they want to push. So, I respect people who take their vote seriously. And that's all because we owe it to the game. We owe it to the winners who've come before, and we owe it to the young men who are deserving of that. So, I'm glad that I didn't think Will was going to win it last year, but I was glad that a couple of defensive guys got in that conversation because it's so cliche and predictable to just give it to the best quarterback, even though that's really what it's become.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Aaron. I hope you don't mind. I'll be bugging the hell out of you, annoying you quite a bit on occasion to get you to come on about Alabama because I'm sure we'll be talking about them quite a bit. Have a great week.
All right, guys. Take care.
Aaron Suttles. You notice he didn't say, okay, I'm okay with that.
He was like, yeah, sure, later. Yeah, I mean, for those who haven't been to Austin, if Waco kept him busy for a day or two, he's gonna plan out like a week, because there is so many restaurants and so many music venues and so many just different things. And I ain't even been down there in a while, but
yeah, it's one of those things you don't know. Like, it's kind of like Austin and Nashville are similar in this, and that you could go there for another event and then like, hey, what's going on here? And this musician, this comedian, this so-and-so is just there playing 8 shows. You're like, well, I got to go do it.
Austin's got like some San Francisco vibes, but cleaner, I would say, and a little Nashville to it as well. Yeah, it's kind of a mixture of those two and probably some others. I will say, for anybody who's looking to like make that next big buck, get some offensive line grading thing set up, because I know for me, speaking to Aaron, and probably, I guess D-line, you still have tackles and sacks and things like that, but as somebody who is a part of an award, and that's the Earl Campbell Award, it's for the best offensive player in college football at the Division I level who's from the state of Texas or plays in the state of Texas. So it's a Texas-based award. So you might be a Jaleel Billingsley, and I don't even know where he's from originally, but you could be somebody who's not from Texas, but you play at UT or Baylor, A&M. So Bijan, he's eligible for it, even though he's from Arizona. Or you could be somebody who played at Waco High, and you go up to Minnesota. Well, you're eligible for it because you're from Waco. So that's pretty much the parameters of the awards. And when it comes to the offensive line, I can never put those guys on there, really, because I can't say for sure that they had a tremendous game or not. If the running back, if Bijan ran for 250 yards, I can assume the offensive line probably played a role in that. But am I going to go back and watch film and see whether it was the left guard or it was the right tackle that helped create most of those holes? You know what I mean?
That's what you wish that the media relations person, you could contact them, which you probably could, but you don't have time to do that with 25 schools in a weekend, if not even 5, and say, hey, listen.
More like every single school.
Who's a road grader? Who's one of the great ones, and they at least can get their name in the conversation.
I would think they need to come up with, the high school coaches, when they send you the nominations for the All-Smoky team, they grade them out pretty well. Like if you would just put their grade up every week of 97%, no sacks allowed, couple of pancake blocks, those kind of things. If those were official statistics, then that would be a lot easier. You know?
But I remember it was maybe Connor Williams one week, and it was like, Texas had ran for a bunch of yards. I was like, but I don't know that he had, he had come back from injury, so I can assume that. And I think he got like honorable mention as a result of that. But how do I know it was him and not, and like you said, it's not 25 games. It's every game at Division I level. So we're talking like way too much to try and pour through to see if a guard at Albany,
The only way is if a media relations guy was to go out and reach out to you himself.
Yeah, but that's way too much work. So if somebody wants to come up with an idea that's not really embedded already into all these other tools that we have, if there was just a way of like, boom, on Sunday afternoon, like here's how the offensive line graded out across the country, and here's why. Here's actually just a set of tools for that. That would be incredible. But I'm not smart enough to figure that out.
All right. By the way, the Big 12 Conference extended their championship agreement with the Cowboys Stadium in Arlington. The Dr. Pepper Big 12 Football Championship game through the 2025 season. It has been there for quite some time, and it will remain there through 22, 3, 4, to the next 4 years at least. When we come back, we'll have the 4 o'clock hour. At 4:15, we're going to hear from Sam Weber. He's the brand communications director for Open Doors. We've had him on before about Open Doors, NIL collectives and relationships, partnerships with different schools. Baylor announced that they would start that with them. It's effective today. He'll come on today and kind of discuss what that actually means for Baylor University or anyone else. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. And here are some of the favorites and some of the opportunities for you to get great prices. Select, Choice, and Prime New York Strip from $8.50 to $12.50 a pound. Boneless, bone-in pork butt at $2.25 a pound. Boneless pork butt, $2.55 a pound. And also whole chickens for $1.99 a pound. Ring bologna, $4.99 a pound. Oxtails, Ever had those before? $8.75 a pound. Also, Gulf shrimp, tiger shrimp, depends on what size you want, from anywhere $7.99 a pound up to $15.99 a pound. Tiger shrimp is a much larger shrimp, almost the size of a lobster tail in a lot of ways, and it could be very, very delicious if you cook it just right. It's Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Did you know the average American pays over $500 a month for their car payment? What would you do if you didn't have to make that payment for 90 days? Where else could you use $1,500? Keep your car payments at Genco. Buy new or refinance your current vehicle and have no payments for 90 days. Take advantage of our low rates and no payments for 90 days. Only at Genco. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies insured by NCUA.
My money, my future, my credit union, Genco.
It's summertime. There's picnics, reunions, cookouts, and so much to do. And Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco is your home for the butcher shop that can help you with beef, pork, poultry, and seafood. They are spectacular at being able to deliver you whatever cut of steak you want. Bone-in ribeye, however thick you want it, that's great. They'll do it. Sirloin, T-bone, porterhouse, bacon wrap filet. And of course, as I mentioned, they have pork, poultry, and seafood. Their Norwegian salmon is spectacular. Also, all of the sauces and seasonings you'll ever need, all the ingredients you'll ever need to make sure you have that perfect, flawless taste. So it's delicious whenever you take something off the grill. And a full-fledged bakery as well, with fresh baked bread and kolaches every single day. Up and down the aisle of Waco Custom Marketplace, you also have what you need, from knickknacks to snacks to more, at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
You know, I enjoyed the article. I saw one today about Alabama, that term rebuilding, and then even Aaron said he had a story a couple of weeks ago. By the way, Eli Gold, the great voice of Alabama, is going to miss early part of the year for some health reasons, and so good luck to him. Hope he's going to be okay. He's got that voice. You know, we're talking about great broadcasters. I always think, when I think of college football, I think of Keith Jackson, the late, great Keith Jackson, among many others as well.
Would he be Top 5 today is top 5 baseball play-by-play guys in honor of Vin Scully, and I think everybody's going to guess who number 1 is. But would Keith Jackson be the number 1 college football announcer?
And for me, yes.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
me he is. Because he did
Alabama, Oklahoma. Yeah.
And he was funny. He had weird sayings.
You know
that
there was and I don't remember back in the early 70s, Keith Jackson most likely, because that's who I grew up with. But God, was it Peter Fleming? There was another guy, Bill Fleming. Bill Fleming, I believe, did some college football, but he's not as known. And there's 2 or 3 others back then, but now there's so many because every game. Back then there were 2 or 3 games on a Saturday, and that was it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, Keith, the one thing I remember Keith Jackson saying was, Alabama versus Auburn here from Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
If you have the Southern persuasion, today's game is what you'd call 3 whoopies and a hot damn.
I mean, you knew it was time for college football when you heard that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And now you hear others, and you're like,
and
okay.
it was a big game.
Yeah, and it was a big game, and it was college football. It wasn't anything else, and it was Keith Jackson on the call. Yeah, you knew what was up. And now, like, if you were eyes closed listening to 99% of announcers, would you really know? And some of that, like if you said Joe Buck, well, that could be NFL, that could be MLB. So that's a little unfair. But, for dedicated to like one sport guys, I don't think I would do very well on that these days.
I would do, like, I can tell you.
Bama's got it.
Yeah. I know. I mean, Gus Johnson is very distinctive because he's made himself that way. And good for Gus. I enjoy listening to Gus. I do. Sometimes it's a little bit much, but he's got Joel Klatt, which is the best analyst in the game. So that's great. I know Chris Fowler's voice because
it's on everything.
30 years now he's on everything. So outside of that, there's a couple college football ones that you have to go. Who is this now? Just a second, and there's some really good ones. But Jason Benetti going over to Fox is huge. Is he going to Fox or is he leaving Fox?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think Jason Benetti going to Fox. Jason Benetti, somebody whose voice I recognize now, just because I've when I watch basketball or whatever, and he's on, he's just really, really good.
So the word or the definition of rebuilding, it's to build something again after it has been damaged or destroyed.
Well, I mean, damaged. They didn't win the national title.
There you go. Yep. And then number 2. Destroyed is the other part of it is you could have some weaknesses that need to be rebuilt. He mentioned the offensive line. He mentioned a couple of other things as well. But it's hard to say that when you're talking about a team that has run college football for 10 years despite Georgia winning the national championship. 13 years despite Georgia winning the national championship last year.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those things where, when he comes on to talk Alabama football, I think I'm like most people, and it's like the obvious pops up like, hey, how good's Bryce Young going to be? Well, duh, But outside of that, compared to a lot of teams where I could run down like 5 things about Baylor right now, well, I cover them closely. So he's going to have a different perspective, and he's going to see flaws that not everybody else sees. I mean, I think it's just really as simple as that. So for him, they don't reach the mountaintop last year. They're the ones right there reaching for it. Georgia just had a longer reach. And for others, that might be the greatest season of all time. For Bama, that's massive disappointment. Mm-hmm. They've been so good, so long, and so at the top that anything that's not, what used to be, which I miss dearly, is the crystal football. What's not that is a failure, basically. And so, why did that happen? Well, these minor things that would be, or I guess things would be minor pretty much everywhere else, or like major to them because like it wasn't perfect. It wasn't the championship at the end of the year. And so, when they look in their mirror, it's a little bit different than Baylor or basically every other team in the country other than Georgia right now looking in the mirror because they are going to see a lot more.
Yeah. Why can Kirk Gibson, just going back to that call, hit a home run with a pulled hamstring and a track guy has a little, like a little muscle tweak and it's going to be over for him because then they're the track, like they're the finely tuned athlete. One little tweak, one little grain of sand in the microchip, and Alabama is not, humming at the frequency they're used to. So, they're going to feel that. And I do think, based on what you just said, they've been so good for so long. One day, and who knows when it is, they're going to come back down to earth and just be another team.
What's your definition of back down to earth? For Alabama.
Where they don't win, they're not in contention every year. Where they're just
they clearly do not make the playoff, and it's not a controversy that they don't make the playoff.
Yeah, where they're LSU right now, where where they're that, where they were,
or where Texas is, or Nebraska is, or where Florida State or Miami.
Where people forget where they were between Gene Stallings and Nick Saban.
Yep.
Where they were for 4 different head coaches between those 2 guys. So where they were then. Because this stretch is better than Bear Bryant's even stretch with Nick Saban. So how are you going to react when it does hit you that, oh, man, it really did end?
Just realized something. And this applies to like most people in this room. But I was sitting there thinking of me growing up in the 90s. Like Alabama they had some successes, especially early on. Like I think, what was their national title in 92?
Yeah.
But beyond that, it was mostly just NCAA headlines, and they didn't really matter as far as my viewing. And I was somebody who was watching Nebraska a ton because they mattered, or Miami or Florida State. Those were the schools that mattered when I was growing up. I was looking at Faith and looking at, Jack and all these like 20 and under basically folks, and all they've ever known is Alabama football is the most dominant thing of all time. That's all they've ever known. They have no idea what we're talking about when we say anybody other than Alabama's ever ruled this sport.
Yeah.
But it's true, guys.
It's true. Here's the thing. Alabama once had a coach that never coached a game for them and got fired because he used a company credit card at a strip club.
Was that the one?
It was Mike Price.
Mike Price who ended up.
Yeah. I mean,
who was actually a pretty good coach. But
you have to fire a guy who makes poor decisions like that.
We were in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and we're on our way back. We drove by Alabama Stadium, went to Tuscaloosa. We drove by the stadium, and it's a pretty impressive thing. Ohio State and the Horseshoe with what at the time was like 2003 or 4. It's like the Roman Coliseum when you drive up on it. Alabama's just a monstrous stadium, and I know it's been built on and added more since that time. But the statue's out in front of them. And this was a long time ago, and Saban was already one of the statues.
Yeah, it was like 15 years ago. He's had a statue that long, and he's won like 7 more titles. It's crazy.
It was probably somewhere about in the last decade or so. But you're right. He's already his statue was already up because he had already won 2 or 3 national titles. But then we were. By the way, Garrett, do you have the tweet from Matt Prem, who covers Oregon? I sent that to you. Look at this note. This is Matt who covers Oregon. He's a Pac-12 guy. I've seen some of his feed, but I thought this was pretty cool. And this is a note about since the death, of course, of college football with USC and UCLA, the Pac-12 teams are dead, and they have work to do. But since that announcement, Oregon has landed its highest-rated quarterback commit, the number 2 overall player in the 2023 football class, Dante Moore, and the number 2 player ever for them in basketball, and the number 7 overall player in the 2023 basketball class. I think this was maybe yesterday in Kwame Evans Jr. Oregon's doing just fine, and I appreciate Matt with that knowledge. That doesn't mean that means they're in later on, or anyone else is right now wondering if they're in. But I thought it's great to see that because we put that up about what Baylor's done or some other schools have done as well.
Yeah, that's great. The Big Ten will really enjoy that. Just kidding.
Jeez.
No, that's great for the Ducks. I mean, I think one thing that people got wrong initially with NIL was that a school like Oregon would be like the poster boy of just throwing Nike money around. And that hasn't really been the case as far as I can tell. Like, I'm sure they've thrown some around, but it hasn't been this egregious. That was more Miami originally. It was the egregious, like, we're going to abuse the rules and we don't care and you can't stop us.
So one of the things people need to know about Phil Knight is he did not build Nike to where it was by being just like, woo, He went to Magic Johnson first. And then and then when Nike wasn't growing, he went to Michael Jordan and said, because Michael wanted Adidas and that's who he wanted to be with. And he said, no, Nike can be your brand, and then it exploded. So he's not just he's not just going to people, because if he goes to a recruit and that guy winds up sucking and he's sponsored by Nike, he's already had to deal with that with basketball. I'm sure he knows how that works out. That's a sunk cost on somebody who didn't work out for your brand.
Yep. So, they haven't been – I think a lot of the fear-mongering really hasn't happened at all. I mean, other than, arguably Miami here and there, or, I know there's been – what you want to say about Tennessee or whoever's had more of a publicized deal that's been made. And even still, it's not like it's been
everybody on the team. The only thing that we've seen like that has been like a Texas Tech style deal where everybody gets this, and we're going to also get some extra, walk on some money as well. But yeah, Oregon's great program, and there's reason to believe that they're going to be one of those that's going to, keep flying high no matter what happens with conferences. I think that they're a team that you can't feel like you don't need to lose any sleep, but I think you're losing a lot less sleep than pretty much all of your brothers and sisters in the Pac-12 right now,
Speaking of one of them, Oregon, this is from Joel, who's a UCF fan. Oregon will be more relevant in a different conference than USC and UCLA will be in football in the Big Ten. I'm not going to say that's completely wrong. You never know.
But look,
it's interesting.
If you give yourself a chance, say the Big Ten decides that world domination stops at 16, they're good.
Plus Notre Dame.
Plus Notre Dame.
Okay.
But they don't. Yeah. They decide that Oregon and Washington don't, blow their skirt up all that much. So Oregon's there. Oregon now has a chance. If you look to the Big 12, one of the reasons the Big 12 is excited that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving is there's no historical, albatross around your neck anymore. It is wide open for everybody.
Yep.
It is open for everybody. If you are, even to a very lower extent, Kansas, can look and go, that's Oklahoma and Texas Mountain. They don't know. They climb.
Somebody's going to be elite, and it's going to be sustainable. But is it going to be 1, 2, or 3 teams, and who will it be?
Yeah,
I don't mean this in any political type of way or anything like that, but it almost seems like it's the vision of what America is, of it's equal for everybody, and everything's it's going to be like that. Whereas it has been more like a reality, where it's there's a couple of the big dogs at the very top of it that get most of the money and they kind of control things, and you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and if you beat them 5 years in a row, they're going to find a way to
exactly right. But yeah, no, it's more of this almost idyllic dream of everybody's on the same exact plane is what you're talking about. Whereas the conferences, the way they have been aligned is, yes, it's very, it's not weighted equally all the way through. But yeah, if Oregon were to jump into the Big 12, and we're just riffing here, we're not reporting anything, but if that were to happen, yeah, I think they could look, and I'm sure there would be their number of fans who feel like they're better and whatever, but I do think historically they'd pretty much be on the same plane. And I think it makes for some damn good sports. I really do, but I understand their reasoning and why they are not enticed to go and jump right into that. They've got, what appears to be not necessarily offers, but multiple options in front of them. Whether it's stay right what you're doing, and now you don't even have the pesky LA schools to worry about at this point. But then there's others that wonder if that hurts them because they no longer have those LA schools to kind of, hey, we're going to be down in LA soon. Mm-hmm. So whether that hurts or hinders them, that remains to be seen. But yeah, they're the top. They're arguably the top brand now. And if they were to, look elsewhere, sure, there's that Big Ten option that may or may not really be there. We don't really quite know that. Obviously, there's no offer because if there was, we'd have already heard something. Mm-hmm. But, if there's an offer in a couple years, and then the Big 12 obviously would love to have them, I think. So, yeah, they're sitting there not too worried about not having a future, but where that future is, that's the big question.
I want to bring something up about Alabama, the fact that they used to play a lot of their games. Somebody put this up, Jason. Bama didn't even play all their home games in Tuscaloosa back in the day. They had Bryant-Denny, and, of course, they have the one in Birmingham, and then, of course, Tuscaloosa. Arkansas still does that, I believe, don't they? If you're an Arkansas fan, don't they have War Memorial and in Little Rock that on occasion they'll play their games there? And, of course, they have the stadium in their home base in hometown of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I think that Arkansas still on occasion plays a game in Little Rock, Arkansas. War Memorial Stadium, I believe. I don't know who it is against, but I still think that they had a deal that runs for a couple of more years into 2024. I looked that up earlier. Now, when we come back, Sam Weber, he is the brand communications director for Open Doors. Open Doors announced a partnership with Baylor, and they have partnerships with dozens and dozens of schools around the country. We've had him on before to discuss NIL and Open Doors, and he's next. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, and perhaps you used to be, and you need to be. How do you do it? Go to his website, pettyclinic.com, top left-hand corner, email and phone number. Tell him I sent you. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, and you hear and see all the TV commercials now, and most people think about ED, something wrong with your sex drive. That's part of low testosterone. because your energy, your sleep habits, extra body fat, and much more can be a part of that as well. So why not get checked out if you have any of those symptoms? Go to the website, tell him I sent you, pettycliniclowt.com. He and his staff will set you up for blood work. He will get the results. If they're too low, he will contact you to give the option of adding to your testosterone level, and you can become the high-performance man you want to be, used to be, need to be. pettycliniclowt.com.
During the Make This the Summer event, Allen Samuels is celebrating with an incredible lineup of new 2022 models like the Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4xe. These vehicles bring power, style, and a smooth ride you'd expect from a Jeep. The Grand Cherokee L even brings you extended seating with a third row. Come see what Allen Samuels can offer you and your family and find the Jeep SUV that fits your lifestyle.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like mortgage lending, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Jet motion they go with here with Baldwin. And Baldwin breaks free. And the Bears, Sikkim, Monterey Baldwin.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We mentioned last week the startup Waco, which is working on some relationships with Baylor athletes when it comes to entrepreneurship and much more, and also startup businesses. And we also told you that Open Doors and Baylor would have a partnership that would start, in fact, next week. That was last week. And, of course, it has started. And we're now joined by Sam Weber, Brand Communications, Open Doors. And Sam has been on with us before. And, Sam, thank you very much. What was the conversation like when Baylor contacted you? And I know that they're kind of late behind the curve compared to most everybody else. It's good to see it.
Sure. Great to be on the show again, guys. So I wouldn't say Baylor's behind the curve. Baylor's been a partner for a while now, but they're, I guess, just now becoming one of the first schools to launch their own school NIL marketplace. I guess I can't emphasize enough how big of a deal this is for the athletes and for the everyday Baylor fan. It makes it incredibly easy for any fan to go in, browse the hundreds of Baylor athletes, and offer them a deal on the spot. I think there's been a hunger for fans to understand how they can participate in NIL, and this marketplace is really it. So we're excited to get off the ground. We're excited that Baylor's supporting their athletes, and yeah, excited for football to get going, right?
Yeah, Sam, so one of the things about Open Doors is you guys kind of are, not necessarily, beholden to, you don't have to be a big business. You don't have to be Pepsi or Nike. You can be a local business and easily connect, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. I would say close to, if not equal amount of the NIL deals that came through in this first year came from those small local businesses, those groups that want to support the university. And now through the first year, they've been able to support student athletes for the first time. I only expect that to grow in the coming months and years.
Sam, I'm checking out the Baylor Marketplace on opendoors.com, and what's interesting to me and I wasn't aware of is the former athlete aspect of this as well.
Yeah, that's right. So any former athlete alumni, I guess if you go back to our roots, we used to work with professional athletes to help them get connected with brands, really act as that marketplace for them where they could easily complete deals. So through that, we've had, the RG3s of the world using Open Doors to work with some of the bigger brands in sports over the years. It's made the transition down to working with student athletes really seamless, helping us understand what athletes at the highest level want and need, and then being able to build those new features that might apply to, the walk-on linemen and not just the Heisman contenders of the world.
Yeah, like, for example, I can see there's Tay McWilliams, who's going to probably be Baylor's starting running back, but there's also RG3, and there's Corey Coleman, and there's Bryce Petty, and I didn't know that there was that aspect to it. That's very cool that it also includes former stars as well, so yeah.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, Faith Lynch.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Faith Lynch, who's in our studio, who's one of our, I guess, part of the behind-the-scenes support groups, a volleyball player at Baylor. I just saw her. I didn't realize this. She's in it. She can do a shout-out, a post, an appearance, an autograph, pitch, anything. And so she's in it. That's pretty cool, Faith, that's a part of what you do as well. Sam, when now you see the NIL, when you see what you do, what you see what others are doing as well, is it starting to at least take shape where people understand it better?
Yeah, we're certainly moving towards that place. I think there's still a healthy amount of education and exploration to be done in that fan segment. And that's really what we're pushing for right now. Once you get past that, the collective organizations, the larger brands and businesses that have been active through the first year, I feel like there's a steadier hand at the wheel. Everybody's becoming a little more experienced, a little bit more open to trying to work with student athletes where, when you look back at last July, everybody was looking at this thing like, hey, we just don't want to get in trouble. Now we're getting a little bit more aggressive. We're getting a little bit more understanding of the landscape, and I think you're going to see student athletes benefit more and more because of it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Do you feel like you're coming out of the I mean, you guys were ahead of it, but there was just, like you said, there's this fog of stuff of to do. Or you feel like you're coming out of that fog now to where you can tell what are good deals and bad deals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're seeing just a little bit more professionalism all around. I think the next thing that we're excited about is bringing the fans into this. So through the first year, only 4% of athletes that reported or received a deal through Open Doors received one from a fan. when you start to think about, Baylor's football stadium holds about 50,000 fans on 7 Saturdays a year. If 1% of those fans, so 500 fans, if they send an athlete a deal at our average fan transaction rate of about $150, that's $75,000 to the Baylor football players on a single Saturday, and that's just 1% of the fan base, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see how the projections or the ideas really start to stack up, and you can see those fans start to have a real impact on what the perceived and real success of what Baylor student athletes can become.
Sam, have you seen a way, and speaking of changing perceptions, in the way that somebody like yourself or others that you work with, has the perception changed around you guys as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not that long ago that Open Doors was looked at as kind of a small fledgling business, and I think plenty of other small technology startups that have been around the NIL space. We were fortunate to be around it a little bit before most, but you just, from a national and even local perception, there's definitely more attention on what's happening inside our doors and the doors of many companies around the industry. But it's there's a lot of attention these days, and I think that's a good thing. Definitely strives to create a better technology and better business.
I mentioned that Baylor might have been behind the curve, and that's probably more the perception at times of their fan base, because they're not out there with this, look at us, and some of these things that you see that have happened for other schools. It's good to see. How many of the 131 or so would you say FBS teams are now attached to what you do?
Sure. So we work with about 120 schools around the country, but that's at all levels of college sports. I think just at the FBS level, so P5, G5, and
right,
a few others in there, I think we're looking at around 80.
That's a pretty good number. Do you feel like sometimes these stories that someone's getting X amount of money or X amount of millions put a bad light initially on NIL that you had to overcome?
I think it definitely put a perception around it that might not have been entirely accurate, and maybe a little bit self-serving for those individuals that made that public. It's something we've been trying to combat really from pre-July 1st of last year, is that NIL isn't just for the five-star athlete or the Heisman contending quarterback, but athletes at every level of college sports have a real opportunity here. The more enterprising, the more entrepreneurial they are as individuals, the more successful they will be, because regardless of their performance in their sport, right? Mm-hmm. Those athletes who perform in their sport, they will have opportunities, and they will be given chances to succeed in the NIL era. But athletes at every level, if they want it, it's out there for them to go take it.
Do you give the athlete, whether former or current athletes, any kind of advice on what they should do to put a price on what they can do?
Yeah, so actually a brand new product we just rolled out. It's called Open Doors Arc, the athlete rate card. So it leverages all the transactions of hundreds of thousands over the last year plus that have happened through Open Doors to try to provide an accurate market rate for every student athlete for the various types of activities they could do. So it'll tell an athlete that, a social media post from you, the market rate is X, an appearance is Y, a video shout out, like Cameo style video shout out, that's Z. And from there, the athlete can either use those exact market rates, or they can go and set their own. But either way, we want them to be informed of what actual successful deals look like in the market, so that then they can go and confidently set the rates that they believe they're worth.
What are your rates for media personalities? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm getting married next year. I need all the help I can get.
Man, the rates for you and me, I don't know if it goes low enough.
$2 I'll post on social media right now.
$2. If you found it on the street, you'd pick it up. Yeah. I don't know if this is a simple question or an obvious answer, but if in fact, for example, a student athlete has their deal here, and someone does click on it, $12 or $5,000, whatever it is, where does that money, does it go directly to them? Does it go to Open Doors and it's distributed? How does that work in that way?
Yep. So by the time the athlete sees the deal offer, Open Doors has secured that money. One big thing that it's been a pain point of the NIL era is, an athlete that accepts a deal via Instagram DMs or whatever, and then the money never shows up. That's something that never happens when an athlete uses Open Doors. So to send an offer through to an athlete, the buyer has to provide credit card information that then goes through Open Doors to the athlete. So if an athlete says their appearance is worth $5,000, they agree to that deal, that athlete receives $5,000 on the nose. Open Doors takes a small transaction fee from the buyer, not the athlete. The product's 100% free to the athlete and always will be.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you, Sam. We appreciate it. I remember we had you on pretty early on when all of this started, and it sure has changed quite a bit, and yet you guys are as solid as a rock with what you do. We appreciate your time. That's right. We're going and growing. Thank you, guys. Absolutely. Sam Weber. And again, I was curious about, let's say, Haley Peterson, equestrian, Baylor, $10 for this or that. And where does that money go? And he just explained exactly how they work that out to make sure that the athlete does get what they're supposed to get based on what they're going to do. Grant Miller, Baylor offensive lineman. And there's Gabe Hall, defensive line, Garmin Randolph, Erica Porter, women's basketball. Faith Lynch, do you have that one, Garrett? Can we put up the link to Faith? We want to get her some NIL money. I sent that to you in an email. I'm not sure if you have that or not. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I don't know why there's this perception that they're not doing anything. Like you said that the last couple of days, and I was going back and listening to Mac Rhodes last night, and he kind of balked at the fact that they weren't doing anything. But I guess that's just perception amongst the fan base or something.
It's perception because you see, he addressed that, Sam did, that you see some that have probably been more, look at me, what we're doing for athletes.
That's not Baylor.
And that's not Baylor. They're not going to do that. At least Mac Rhodes has said that over and over again, even though there is NIL money that is being distributed and added into the pockets and bank accounts of student athletes throughout Baylor. And now, as we mentioned, which was cool, even former players and athletes as well.
Yeah, so they're not doing it flashy, but it doesn't mean they're not doing anything.
Right.
And now they've had two different announcements in the last couple days, or the things that were already out there that have now just gone to a further direction. Open Doors and the GXG exchange that we talked about, last week. So yeah, I mean they're in the game. I think if you're not in the game at this point, I mean, yeah, you deserve all the criticism in the world. I know some might call moving a certain way slow. Some might call it calculated. And I think that if you're going to put Baylor in one of those boxes, I'd say they'd be far more in the calculated box than in the we'll just take our time here. But it is good to see something out there, something substantial. So for the folks who need hey, here's a big red arrow pointing look, here's what we're doing. Yeah, there you go. And now you've got a direct place to go. And it was interesting to me to click on that page for Open Doors and Baylor and see Robert Griffin III and see Bryce Petty and all of that. I had no idea they included former athletes. So that's why I keep circling back to that I find that pretty neat. But yeah, great for everybody involved, and hopefully it works out well.
Very cool. It's like Paul, would you compare this to going on somewhere where you're looking for product?
Yeah.
And you can pick whatever you want. There's different types, whether it's eBay or Amazon when it comes to product.
I'd like to say merchandise more than product.
Okay.
Yeah. They're different, but there's for celebrity things like that, you can do Cameo.
Right.
Depending on what you want. You can have, I just looked it up. For $140, you can have Barry Williams, who is Greg Brady, be like, hey, it's good socks.
I saw one with who is the guy that's always in the Tarantino movies? He's had a troubled life, but there's a lot of people in Tarantino movies. Not Matt. I don't know why it's not Matt Dillon, but he looks somewhat similar. I'm gonna have to look up
Michael Madsen.
Yes, Michael Madsen.
Or is it?
No, it was Michael Madsen. It was Michael Madsen, and I was watching this show, and I don't know, they're just going around TikTok videos, and there was one of him doing the cameo, and it was just the strangest thing, man. But yeah,
how much did he get?
I don't have any idea. I can't imagine it was much. But, yeah, I mean, he was doing his – there's pretty much anybody out there nowadays that can do it. But this is way more set up and way cooler, and I think it's great for the athletes.
Faith, can we put your page up? Is that okay? Would you mind? I just want to make sure we didn't put something. Do you have that, Garrett? I thought – I did. I emailed it to you. Okay.
So Michael Madsen, hold on, $350
for what?
For him to, like, say it was your birthday, and he'd come out and be like, "Hey, happy birthday."
That was the thing. Is the
Smokey.
video is like, "Hey," and he's like in a bathroom stall.
Yeah,
and he's like, so he must have been at like a restaurant, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I got to go do this cameo real quick," and he ran into like the quietest place he could go to, and that's why it was just funny. But yeah, $350, good for him, because clearly at least one person was paying for it.
I would like to do that to send it to like a 7-year-old, like
Michael Madsen.
Hey, little Jimmy, here
Scar
it's your birthday.
Scar that poor kid. Yeah.
Yeah, my emails.
I'm sure you're a big fan of my movie Reservoir Dogs.
Both of them got kicked back, Garrett. So I'm not sure if there's an issue with the link or your email's protective of what I'm sending. But if you got it or not, I send it again. So okay. All right, but what you could do is go on this, for example, this page. This is Faith Lynch, volleyball, defensive specialist and setter. Mentions her affiliations as Baylor, student athlete, where she's from. And you can she'll do a shout out, a post on social media for you, an appearance at a practice or an event, autograph, something for you, and also even pitch whatever product it might be. Respond to your custom request, and you can, whatever the cost is. Everyone has their own cost on this as they start to make money as student athletes through NIL. I've also seen this reaction on the message boards when I go in there and just see, okay, let me look at what the responses are. And there's some that go, listen, I give to the Baylor Bear Foundation. I'm not giving any more money to anybody else. And what's happening is the possibility of those who are donors and boosters who have been giving their money to schools for things, for example, building things or whatever, and you start to wonder about, they have to make decisions perhaps if they're going to do, let's say somebody who has the kind of money to do $50,000 or $100,000, how much of that goes to the school? How much will they start to help with the NIL and relationships with the athletes as well? All right.
First world problems.
Yes, absolutely.
Where am I going to send my tens of thousands of dollars? Am I going to have to split it up now? My God, no. I mean, yeah, that's a problem potentially, but I mean, it's what it is. So whether or not, you were comfortable sending your check to a specific place for a specific cause, or now you've got to divvy it up a little bit more, that's for those with the money who do that to figure out. I'm not one of those in that position, but yeah, I could see where that would be a little bit problematic, but I mean, either way, the school's losing here. I mean, they're going to lose some of their pie because either they're going to have to start doing it themselves or they have to rely on those who give them money to also spread that wealth to the athlete. So either way, the school's, not going to see probably as much, and then you just hope that those boosters go, you know what, I'm a millionaire. I'll, send an extra $50K this way. But yeah, you do wonder, like, how far can you go before there are people who just go, all right, we're tapped out here. Like, we just paid for the football facility. I can't give you $1 million for Baylor football or whatever. Yeah.
I wish I thought I kept this from @Congo on the chat room. Do you feel like ESPN will try to hurt, was it CBS and NBC on any kind of relationship? That's the only thing about a super chat. I click on it, then all of a sudden I lose it as it goes all the way up the top of the food chain of the chat room. Did you read it?
Here's how the networks hurt each other. They just beat each other for deals. Here's how the streamers have hurt Netflix. They took off half their good content. You hurt them for deals. So I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any. I'm not to say there's any backstabbing or whatever. I'm sure there is, but the best way to do it is just
I mean, what would they even want to do at this point, though?
Yeah.
Like, what? I mean, they've got the SEC, they've got what they want. So, I mean, outside of further expansion, I think that they clearly were, in the works on something before Bob Bowlesby. Oh, wait a second. Did a commissioner come out after his teams got raided and actually say something directly to the people who did it? Yeah, I think that did happen. Was that Pac-12 media? No, it wasn't. That was Bob Bowlesby last summer telling ESPN to their faces, like, hey, I'm on to you guys. Remember?
Yep.
And basically,
cease and desist is what he did.
Cease and desisted their butts. And so, anyways, but yeah, that's something where I just don't know. Like, I had to see the question.
Well, here it is. Do you think ESPN will hurt if Big Ten media rights go to CBS /NBC?
No, because
that's a much different question.
No, because they only had a little bit of Big Ten anyway.
The Big Ten's going to be run by Fox.
Yeah, the Big Ten's going to be run by Fox.
And they're going to let part of their package be ESPN? They're going to nibble into that? They think?
Maybe, yeah. But, I mean, it could be somebody else. But, yeah, no, I don't. Look, do I think that Disney/ESPN is going to hurt for any of this? No.
No.
No,
nobody's hurt. Everybody's making billions of dollars. Nobody. I mean, the people involved are all making not billions but millions of dollars. So no, I don't believe George Kliavkoff that UCLA and USC are already like, oh my gosh, what a terrible decision we make. No, I think they're very happy with what they're doing. I think the Big Ten's very happy with the direction they're going. I think ESPN's very happy with being the home of the SEC and whatever else comes with that. ACC also in their bag. So. Yeah, I don't think that that's going to be a problem at all.
Jacob at DS50, is market size the number one priority conferences look at right now when it comes to their realignment because of their viewership? It is a big part of the combo platter.
But, again, I'm going to say this. I believe a lot of those market-sized TV numbers to be fool's gold because – 250,000 people is 250,000 people. So if 250,000 people watch in San Francisco and 250,000 people watch in Birmingham, that's the same.
Yeah.
Now, San Francisco has more value because more potential people could watch it, but you're just buying on hoping that a bunch of people who never watch college football all of a sudden wake up in the morning and go, you know what I like to do? Watch LSU and Auburn. I don't really think that.
It's a pretty good way to put it. I don't know if I've
It depends because it depends on who you ask on any given day. Yeah. Because in the lead up to the whole discussion, once the UCLA and USC news broke, if you read one thing one day, it was, market size matters the most. And if you read something else the next day, it was, it's future spots matter the most. And then if you read something on Wednesday, it was, like history and tradition coming up. So I think it's a combination to answer your question. I do think market size matters because of the potential number of people that you can have watching your game. So, yes, it matters, but would it be number one? I don't think so. I don't think it is number one. It's not a clear-cut enough figure that you can prove that matters outside of, we hope as many people as possible in this 2 million, person window watches this game.
And also where market size matters is not on potential viewers too, and I left this part out, it's on getting on cable platforms where you are paying 99 cents a month for a channel you'll never watch.
Longhorn Network.
Yeah. So that's what they really want. They want carriage on cable networks when they talk about market size. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter.
Which then comes into Big Ten in New York and why they wanted Rutgers and all of that because of, yes, the number of people out there, carriage fees and all of that. So, yes, size matters to answer your question, but is it the number one thing? I think it depends on probably who you ask, but it's certainly one of the top factors, definitely.
Here's we got to take a break. We'll come back with some more text messages. At just after 5, James Crepia, he works for the Oregonian, covers Oregon and college football. His view on all of this over the last month, USC, UCLA, the Pac-12, Oregon, and where they are, just to get a different point of view, because you know what? We want to give you different points of view, not just what we might think, and all three of us at times completely differ on many different topics, and that's healthy. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank, now available on DoorDash, so hanging out with your buddies, running a beer, boom. Best selection of craft beer is at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. You can just pop it up on DoorDash. They also have the best selection of local craft whiskeys. That's Balcones, Devil's River, TX, Garrison Brothers, all there, all the different varieties, all the different things that they have at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Great customer service, a drive-through window that if you drove up there and saw 4 cars, you're probably looking at about a 6-minute wait total. Bottom line, they're going to get everything in and out and fast. Say you're looking for a gift for someone, a bottle of wine or a vodka or a gin or something. Like, hey, my friend likes gin, and I'd like to get them as a gift, but I don't really know anything about it. They are experts on everything. They have great promotions going on all the time. You can see all those on Instagram. It's a great place with great customer service, great folks at Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street behind the bank, now available on DoorDash.
You know that guy that walks around with pants that are just a little too short? And he's wearing brand new loafers, but no socks. Then he crosses his legs right across from you, and you have to look at his bare ankles. Ugh. Well, that's what it's like to drive your truck around without any step bars. Hi, Jay from Pickup Outfitters here to talk about one of the most common forms of truck nudity, driving around without any step bars. a rampant problem in Central Texas. Now, step bars do have their functional benefits. They save wear and tear on your back and your knees. They make it easy for your wife and your children to get in and out of your truck. But mostly, having step bars on your truck is just the decent thing to do. No one wants to look at your bare rocker panels. So help us end truck nudity and put some step bars on that truck. We have some great specials on either the black or the stainless steel chrome look. Check it out at createacommotion.com/steps. Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution, and help us end truck nudity at Pickup Outfitters.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Did you know that Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a partner of the City of Waco? Did you know that we are open to the public? Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers day passes to the public for only $10 a day, and we offer money-saving memberships. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including bar, yoga, boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. There are free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, elliptical machines, and much more on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training available where you can be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. 17 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Waco's premier experience, where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit our website at wacotennis.com. Call us at 254-753-7675 or visit us next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott, covering Conroe and Houston, 936-756-7717 or cam.heathcott@edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. I've seen people walk in there. First of all, you have so much to show, whether necklaces, bracelets, rings. You have the watches. You have numerous great watches as well. You really have pretty much everything, don't you, when it comes to jewelry?
That's correct. Kind of a one-stop shop and all. And the fact that we have the 2 jewelers on staff, the repairs we can do, the fixing of your jewelry, and the remaking of any jewelry has really set us apart from anybody else.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
365 Sports, Sikkim 365 Radio. I did have a direct message question, and also on one of the replays about why do you say Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports? There's an umbrella, and Sikkim365.com is the umbrella. And then under Sikkim365.com, there are different platforms of what we do. And then there's Sikkim 365 Radio, which is a part of the app, which is being rebuilt online. And then 365 Sports became who we are on YouTube. It's the same thing. It's a simulcast, Sikkim 365 Radio and also 365 Sports. We never, I think, in our right mind, ever saw or thought, did we, that what we did on YouTube would become what we have today, which is continuing to grow, because we've said this before, 27, I just went down too much. Something happened just there, Garrett. I'm not sure what you were doing. 2,700 subscribers in late July of last year, and now nearly 22,500. And we appreciate you along the way for joining us with this show every day whenever you can. The app, Miguel was asking, the app is still being redone. And believe me, it'd be better now than it will be when the football season begins. We kind of found out, right, Paul and Craig, when you did about the app.
Yeah.
About the app being.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be there. So we'll see.
I'm just going to start referring to Sir Bob.
Bob blah blah.
There's Sikkim365.com, the website. Underneath of that, we have Sikkim365 Radio, which is what we started and how we were referred to, which also branched out to what we do here on YouTube, which is 365 Sports. It's the same show, just two different type names of the show. App, online, and also on YouTube. The chat room today has been back and forth. There has been some trash talking about Baylor and North Carolina basketball. What was that, March? When North Carolina almost blew them out of the building and then went in overtime.
Are they rivals now?
You know how you become rivals, either regionality or a long-time traditional series, or you start to play against each other in big moments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they'd have to do it again. I mean, Duke and UNLV had a mini rivalry there for a little bit, back in the early 90s because they were playing each other. Now, I guess Duke and Michigan had that one, that the Fab Five did a documentary about. Still think, the attitude was like they won any of those games. And so they had those, but those aren't. Duke and Michigan isn't a rivalry anymore, but it was then because of the Fab Five and the noise they talked about Duke and, how Grant Hill, pretty much shoved it down their throat.
There are two undefeated teams in college basketball that broke, three of them, that lost in championship games or in the Final Four that got me. 1983, Phi Slamma Jamma, Houston lost to Jim Valvano, and NC State that launched Jim Valvano, of course, to become such a popular figure, and then eventually what he was fighting cancer, and then his speech at the ESPYs. The other was Larry Bird and Indiana State. The great story, they were unbeaten his fifth year and lost in the championship game to a more dominant team, Michigan State, and Magic Johnson, among others. And then there was UNLV that was trying to run the table, and Duke beat them. And normally I'd like to see Duke do well, but in that particular scenario, I'd love to see Tark and UNLV run the table, and I believe lost in the semifinal game of that year back in the early 1990s. Now, last night I saw this on Twitter. John Calipari, a Kentucky basketball coach. They're having a fundraiser. Kentucky, of course, has had some horrible, horrible flooding. And he had a satellite feed or Zoom that was put up on the big screen inside their great arena with Mark Few of Gonzaga. They're close friends. Both, of course, have fantastic basketball teams. Calipari then, he was at Rupp Arena with this massive crowd, and they were promoting the fundraiser to help those who have been displaced and others who have lost so much with the flooding. They actually decided on this call, whatever where Few was, out hunting somewhere, playing golf, out on some kind of water reserve, whatever, that they were going to look, they made up a game. They're going to play each other this season. They just said, hey, we've got November 20th available. And so Calipari's asking Mark Few this. Few goes, yeah, we can play that, but the game's going to be at Gonzaga. And so Calipari goes, oh, okay, we'll do that, but will you return the trip here to Lexington to play us the following year? And Few said, let's do it.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Which is just another great non-conference game between two hellacious programs. So November 20th, they'll be playing home and home, men's basketball beginning during the 2022 season. Now, we're going to have James Crepia, on here in about 10 minutes or so. Let's go through some of the text messages of late. This is from the 801. Brigham Young fan here. Love your show. You guys are the best. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work. Go Cougs. Paul in Utah. Paul, thank you very much for your text. Any thoughts? In 952, the answer is I have no thoughts, and it's not to be negative, about Rice headed to the Big Ten.
No chance in hell of that happening based on, I don't know, everything. I mean, academically, yeah, they would be great. but they don't have near the fan base size, in my opinion, to justify. I mean, what are you going to tell me? They're going to bring the Houston market?
No.
Right? So, yeah, I just think that the chances of that are really low.
All right, here's another interesting one, 850, the 850.
Tallahassee.
The biggest move will be Oklahoma State and A&M joining the Big Ten. A&M is angry with the SEC, and the money is the same.
I don't see Oklahoma State as a fit in the Big Ten for several reasons, most of which are, academics. Not that it's bad, but it's not where the Big Ten wants it to be. Not a big research institution, all those things. A&M, all of those things kind of fit with the Big Ten, except for the fact that they're not leaving the SEC, and they're not mad. I mean, I would say the term would be butthurt more than mad. I mean, they'll
like,
be
really?
fine. They'll be fine with it. They'll be fine with it, and
they've left another conference because of someone being in it before.
Yeah, but
it wasn't like, oh, Texas is here, we're leaving. I mean, it was a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I mean, give them some credit that it wasn't just, we're taking our ball and we're running away. Like, you could view it that way somewhat, but it wasn't exactly that scenario. And it's not like they were the only school that left. I mean, basically the whole makeup of the conference is gone in the next couple of years.
Six of the original 12.
So we're going to bag on them for leaving when there was Colorado and Nebraska, and there will be Texas, and there will be Oklahoma, and come on. So, I don't think that A&M's going to pick up their ball and go. I mean, it's an interesting thought of, like, if the Big Ten wanted to get Texas representation, I'd sure as hell rather have A&M than anybody not named Texas. I mean, that would be an easy choice because of the size of the fan base, the money they're willing to burn, and, the dedication, the size of the stadium, the academics, like all of that would fit. But I think that they probably missed that boat. It would be a hell of a thing for Kevin Warren to swing. But I don't know. I think that as much as that would I could see it both ways. I could see that where that would be a genius move for A&M to pull off. But I also think culturally they're way better off in the SEC. I mean, if anybody was more of a Big Ten feel, I think that would be Texas. And Texas probably could have gone anywhere they wanted to at any number of times. And I remember there being Big Ten rumors out there at one point in time. I don't know how close that actually ever came to being more than just a message board topic. But wouldn't surprise me if that was explored. And I do know for a fact there was some A&M Big Ten talks back in the day that fizzled out for whatever reason. I was just reading about that like a week or so ago, as a matter of fact. But, I don't think that they're going to bolt from the incredible situation they have. It's just an annoyance. It's you have your dream setting, and all of a sudden the thing that you don't want to be around is around again. The person you don't like is back in the office, and you're just like, oh, great. It was so nice here. Now James is back, That's basically what it is. But guess what? You're both going to get big, fat paychecks, and it's not going to be a perfect, angelic setting, but I think ultimately you're going to both love, whether you want to admit it or not, that you're playing each other again. And, all of that comes with that. So everybody's going to be fine.
Well, A&M wanted to prove that they didn't need Texas.
Yeah.
And I think that they've proven that they don't need Texas to make money and be a popular brand because they've been doing it for a decade without them. Now they can play Texas again and have that great rivalry and all that it was, and we can stop talking about, is that ever going to come back? Because it is. And so they'll be happy with that, and they'll be happy. Here's the other thing. Sometimes people are happier when they're fighting with each other. Now they can fight with each other, and it'll make sense again.
Get a room.
Yeah, basically, for real, though. I know they really don't like each other, but that's how it comes across to the outsider observing every November when it's like everybody wants to talk about how much they miss this and the memories. And when my dad used to take me and my mom and I used to go and all those things. And there's all that history. And then they turn around like they hate each other still. There's that give and take.
And look, the A&M's fight song still says, saw Varsity's horns off. Like they haven't had the chance to saw them off in 10 years. But now it'll make sense again. So
it's going to be interesting that they're going to be playing in the same conference again. And I wonder if they would have ever played again if it not been for the realignment. Other than they've just forced. Yeah, you think so. It had been a while.
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah. I think that they eventually are going to look at the money being lost and go like, hey, we could play this game we haven't played. You really think they're going to do this for another 20 years, not play A&M in Texas? Come on.
They're so petulant, both of them, about the way that series. But you're right. Why would you not want to play a game where 100,000 plus people are going to go to it, whether you're home or away? And you're, how far? 80 miles apart? 68 miles? I don't know how far
And
apart.
even if they didn't want to do it, the TV networks would eventually force them to do it. Like, I mean, that's, there's much behind the scenes making things happen, and you think they're going to not lay that out? Like, hey, you think that A&M and Texas as a rivalry wasn't a big talking point when they were talking about the new SEC and all that comes with that? Sure, Oklahoma, Arkansas was, and sure, Oklahoma, A&M was, but Texas A&M is probably right there at the top in terms of TV viewers and stadiums and attendance and pageantry and all that stuff. So I feel like it was inevitable, and I could have gone another 10 years. Sure, why the hell not? But like, I definitely was never under the impression that they were never going to play again. Like, that's just I don't buy that.
Hayden Maxwell, $5 super chat. I'll read it, and then we'll take a break. Come back with James Crepia of the Oregonian.
Which is interesting because of Dennis Dodd's article of what he's going to have to say.
Do you think the Big 12 is dead now with them basically announcing they're going to take the only 4 decent schools left from the Pac-12? That kind of conflicts itself. There's a little conflict in that. If they do that, they're not dead now. If they add the 4, what you say, decent schools, that's an argument on who that might be. Hayden, thanks for the super chat. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're done, I don't think you're adding. You kind of answered that yourself in a roundabout way. But, ultimately, down the road, 5 years, 10 years from now, I mean, I think that's what they still have to figure out, right, is just what does that even look like? And I think Kevin Warren and Greg Sankey and other power brokers behind the scenes probably have a better idea of where we're going because they have the power and they can help with the partnerships with TV networks kind of guide us to wherever that's going to be. And, look, they're doing it right now. They did it last summer with the OU in Texas, and they did it this summer with USC and UCLA. And the TV networks, I'm sure, are anxiously awaiting what all's going on as far as, the Pac-12 and what they're going to do. And certainly there's some advice being given on, what adding these teams looks like versus what adding, those teams looks like. So I think right now, outside of the SEC and the Big Ten, folks are just trying to do what's best for themselves to put themselves on some solid footing for the time being. But I don't think anybody's under the impression in the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or even the ACC for that matter, which is a unique story in its own because of just the length of that contract. But I think everybody out there also kind of feels like there's a chance that could fall apart in the next 12 years. So I think for anybody that's not in those two big boats right now, you're just trying to do what you can to keep your head above water. And as far as if you're still swimming and breathing 5-10 years from now, I think you kind of just play that as it comes and you try to figure that out as best you can, as soon as you can, but you're not going to have every answer right now.
By the way, when we brought up the question, it was a text about Oklahoma State A&M. We're going to read some of those and answer them as well. When you ask the question, we want to try to respond to you as well. That's not happening, but thank you for those clarifying that as well. Hayden was clarifying that. He meant Big Ten, add the rest of the decent teams, so the Pac-12 is what he was talking about. We got a break. James Crepia from the Oregonian next on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. Got a lot of great deals going on right now over at Richard Carr. They're the people you can count on for a great price, great customer service as well. And I had my car over at Richard Carr just a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact, or not a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, to get my car fixed up. And it was a great process. Donnie over there did a great job of helping me out and making sure that I got everything done that I needed to get done, and that included getting some fender work, that included getting the sides done as well, and that included just the money part of it. They helped me out with all of that. It was a great experience, and I highly recommend, just from a customer service standpoint, going over and checking out the great people at Richard Carr. They've got great deals on cars and trucks going on right now. If you're looking to buy new, then get on their inbound vehicle list. What you do by getting on that inbound vehicle list is you basically put yourself in line to be first come, first serve, and that new car or truck of your dreams. Of course, you can talk to them about exactly what you want, the model, get it all set up, get your name on that inbound vehicle list, and as soon as that car is ready to arrive at the dealership, you are up next to get that ride that you've been looking for. Now, if you're looking to buy not brand new, you're looking to get something a little bit quicker, you don't want to get on a list and have to wait and do all that, well, they've got plenty of premium pre-owned cars and trucks as well all over the dealership, cars, trucks, and SUVs to your liking. So just go by the dealership or give them a call, and they will hook you up with the best customer service in Central Texas. They've been in business for over 20 years now, proud Baylor Bears. And, again, just my experiences personally, I've had to go over there twice now in the last year plus, and each time I've walked away feeling like, man, I'm glad I bought my car here. Well, guess what? I didn't buy my car from them. That's just how great the customer service is. So trust the good local people you can count on. 23 years in Central Texas. Richard Carr, run by proud Wacoans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. State Fair tornado fries, nachos, and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
There are some more stories today that are interesting, involving future college football, alignments, conferences, strengths, weaknesses, whatever. We'll get to a little bit of that between our segment about the start and also John Machota from Cowboys training camp in Oxnard, California. James Crepea from the Oregonian. He's been with us before, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. James, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So where do you stand on the future of the Pac-12? And yes, Notre Dame, Big Ten TV deal, Pac-12. Where do you see what's going to happen to the Pac-12?
That's to me the first major domino from a realignment standpoint in terms of the potential ripple effects thereafter, and that it's the first conference standing in conference realignment that will be impacted because its grant of rights is up first. That's why. If the shoe were on the other foot and the Big 12's grant of rights is up 1 year before the Pac-12, then it would be the Big 12 being the first domino potentially. But it's the reverse. It's the Pac-12's grant of rights is up, in August of 24, and basically the Big 12 is 1 year later. So from that perspective, that's the big unknown, and that's the first domino in the sequence. But to me, the first thing that really has to be decided, and not looking past whatever Notre Dame may or may not decide regarding its affiliation in future, that to me is related and obviously very important, but the playoff is the first true domino in all of this. Because for any league, whether we're talking about the Pac-12 or what's the future of the Big 12, is their future somehow together, though that certainly does not appear to be the case at the moment. None of it, none of these hypotheticals, none of these discussions, none of these lobbing of grenades between commissioners or university presidents means a lick on either conference if the playoff doesn't include access for one or both conferences as it does now. If either of them gets shut out or both of them get shut out because the playoff and the postseason looks very different beginning in 2026, then it doesn't matter who aligns with who if you're not part of whatever and whoever has access to the playoff. So that to me is the first decision that really matters. Could Notre Dame obviously potentially influence some of that? Sure. But ultimately, I think the decision about what the playoff looks like beginning in 26 when its new contract begins is what's going to drive everything thereafter.
So, James, if there is a 12 to 16 team playoff, obviously that would be good news for everybody, but in particular those A5, Power 5 conferences. But even if there is a playoff expansion, you think that they would still be on shaky ground?
Well, why do you say it's obvious that 12 or 16 is good for everybody?
Well, because you would think that you got to fill it with somebody, right? You can't just keep going down the list of what would be mediocre.
But you're starting from the assumption point that expansion means that it's an expanded playoff field that includes all the entities sitting at the table as they do today.
Well, wouldn't they be the ones who have to vote on it?
No. Not to start in 26, no. To start early, when we were addressing the 12-team proposal last year, which was to start in 2024, 2 years early, yes, it required unanimous approval from all 11 conferences and Notre Dame sitting at the table. That got voted down. So now we're up to the conversation of what starts in 26 with a new contract, whether it's expanded or not. Is it 8? Is it 12? Is it 16? Are there auto bids? Are there not? But who has to decide that starting in 26 is whoever makes a decision, not all 11. It could be a subgroup of that 11, and that subgroup could be 2.
That's what Bill Hancock, and there's a couple of things he told us we didn't agree with, but one of the things he said is there's not going to be any changes until 26. I mean, that's done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At this point, and I know that's not satisfying for a lot of people, but fact is, guys, there's national championships and bowl allotments and all these things are tied in, and you don't just create a new postseason. And I don't want to hear about, oh, well, in 20 they figured it out. Yeah, in 20 everything in the system got figured out. But you're talking about a situation where you've got committees for the national championship and cities who have bid on this process to have a standalone championship game and allotments for and I realize the year 25 seems far off, but like nobody's going to make any adjustments obviously for this season. 23 is gone. So no, the whole conversation was about doing it for 24 or 25. And by voting it down, this past June, ultimately, for the proposal that came forth a year ago, yeah, we're looking at 26, in which case, again, don't start with the assumption then that who decides what the playoff looks like in 26 and how many teams and what the structure is does not have to be all 11 conferences in Notre Dame making that decision at all. It doesn't require unanimous approval at all. The only thing that required all 11 and unanimous was to do it before 26. Starting in 26, as few as one, theoretically, could make a decision, which is why, it's a little bit of saber rattling, but why you heard Greg Sankey talk about that 2 months ago is, well, we literally have nothing beginning in 26. So, the SEC has a SEC-only playoff, format lying around in a, filing cabinet somewhere. Now, of course, we all know in a practical world that's not going to happen, but you have to acknowledge that starting in 26, there is no postseason format right now. That's what we're discussing. So why do I say it's the first domino to fall? Because I don't operate from the assumption that all 11 entities that are presently represented will automatically sit back at the table and be represented again.
So where does that leave the Pac-12 in your mind, timeline-wise?
The clock is ticking on the Pac-12, and its extinction is in 2 years from yesterday. So until and unless they have a grant of rights that says otherwise, their grant of rights ceases August 2nd, 2024. That's what's on paper. Now, we say, well, they're in TV negotiations. They could extend that. Of course, right. But both sides of the table, if you're the Pac-12 or any member of the Pac-12, why would you agree to a grant of rights for any period of time beyond 2026? Right now it's into August of 24. Why would you agree to anything beyond the end of the playoff as it presently stands without knowing if you have access to the postseason going forward? If you tie yourself up, if you're the Pac-12, if you're Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Utah, whoever, and you agreed to a grant of rights for 5 more years to 2029, but then the Big Ten and SEC decide to hold the playoff starting in 26, and you've just agreed to your grant of rights based on the idea that you'd be included, but now you're not included. Well, now you just tied up your grant of rights, and you're not even included in the playoff. So what do you do? Conversely, if you're Fox or ESPN or Amazon or whoever is bidding on, the media deal for the Pac-12, why would you agree to anything beyond 26 without knowing if the conference you're paying the rights for? Why is the television inventory valuable? Well, because it's college football and people care. Right, they care because the stakes matter and the teams are good. 2 of the biggest brands and the biggest market in the Pac-12 are leaving. We know that. Okay. They have not always been the most successful. Historically, obviously, USC, no question. But obviously, UCLA has not been. And in the last 10, 15 years, they have not been the most successful teams in the league. We know that. All right. But why would, if you're bidding for it, Fox, ESPN, whoever, would you agree to any number without knowing, again, about the playoff? And since they're the same entities that are going to be bidding on whatever the new playoff is also, that's why I say that's the first decision that matters here is expansion, playoff expansion, what's the format, and who is included in said format. And I personally, maybe it's just me being jaded, cynical, Machiavellian, but I don't believe until it happens that we should just assume that the Power Five as we know it and the Group of Five and Notre Dame, those 11 entities will just sit back at the table and manage to decide and come to a decision, even if it's just majority decision or super majority, as to what that looks like beginning in 26. Because particularly if you're Kevin Warren or Greg Sankey these days, other than with each other, you really don't need all the others. Now, do you?
No.
That would be one of the most college football messed up things to do after all this time of fans wanting an expanded playoff. Say, yes, we'll expand it, but we'll restrict who can get in it. Counteracts.
That's college football, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, there'll be 12 teams.
Exactly. That's why I say that's why I asked you when you said, oh, well, if it goes to 12 or 16, it'll be good for everybody. I said, whoa. Why? What if it's a 12 or 16, but it's half Big Ten and half SEC? Right. Now, nobody down there is going to complain. Nobody from those leagues is going to complain. But how about everybody else? Well, that's the first – why do I call it the first domino? Because especially with the timelines of the Pac-12 and the Big 12's grant of rights expiring in the next 2 and 3 years, if the Big Ten and SEC do this, and I say if, I'm not guaranteeing it's happening, I'm not telling you it's going to happen. I'm saying it's possible. So if it did, well, then it's not just, oh, well, they're just going to both sit at 16. If they create a barrier to entry into the postseason, whereby you must be a member of their league to get in the first place, well, then you've driven up the value of being bigger, quite frankly. You've changed the math of TV distribution and what it means, geography and all those things, because if being in one of the two super leagues is the barrier in the first place, well, then geographic ties are less relevant. It just becomes about overall television strength and performance of your program and resources. So, yes, I'm not, again, do I think we get there eventually in college football? Yes. Do I know if that's going to happen in the next 2 to 4 years or 14 years? No. But right now, just go by what's on paper and what the money says. That's it. Everything else about geography, about tradition, about rivalries, stop. We know what the money. We have seen enough reports about what the money is. We'll find out what the Big Ten's deal eventually is here in the not too distant future. But it's going to be so enormous that how could anyone at a Pac-12, or again for the Big 12 for that matter, how could anyone sit there as the university president or chancellor and say, yes, I want to agree to an extension of our grant of rights for somewhere in the ballpark of a decade, and I'm going to put my institution $40, $50, $60, $70 million behind Rutgers every year.
Yeah,
that's going to be acceptable. That's going to be something that people who are in those chairs have a fiduciary responsibility to sign that contract and put their institution in the best position to succeed on a field, competitively, economically, you name it. And you're going to sign on a contract that says, yeah, tie me up for 6, 8, 10 years, and we're going to be $60 million annually behind Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers.
James, again, Crapia with us, the Oregonian with us on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. There's a lot of good stuff on the chat room from Monty, among others. James needs to come on this show weekly. He's the most honest, on point regarding realignment that has been on this show recently. And not everybody agrees with you, James, and that's not, you don't care, and that's what we do shows for.
No, that's fine. I get it. I'm not proclaiming it's going to happen. I'm not telling you it's absolutely going to happen. I'm just saying don't hold out and automatically start from the assumption and jump-off point that, well, we're going to expansion and everybody wins. No, I think we're going to expansion, but I'm not so sure everybody wins. Don't start with everybody wins. Who's everybody? And I think we may or may not have the same answer as to who everybody is. That's all I'm saying.
So if this does happen, you're talking about grant of rights, and nobody would sign a long one. Well, the ACC is already locked into one until well past doomsday. So where does this put them in all that?
Well, because we're like you say, all right, then what happens? All right, well, if the SEC and the Big Ten did that, okay, well, then the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are scrambling, and the wrecking ball has come to fruition. All right. Well, again, if the barrier to entry is created, and if ESPN's a party to it, no less, because they'd be potentially bidding for whatever the new playoff is, right? Well, they're economically, obviously, tied, like you just said, with the ACC network and grant of rights. Sure. Well, now you've just told the schools where, in theory, you said, well, I had a sweetheart deal. I wasn't going to re-up and negotiate against myself just because now the ACC schools are upset. Now, probably the majority of ACC schools at that point would say, well, now now we have to be in one or the other. We're not good anymore. Well, now to hell with it. Let's get out of this. And now that would be a next domino of, all right, that leads to disillusion of their grant of rights, whereby the majority would say, we're out, because then you name it. Who goes to the SEC? Who goes to the Big Ten? And we're on our way to 20, 22, 24 team, 2 conferences. In my mind, if I had to draw it up, what is my answer for? My answer for the ACC, oh, well, those 2 have grant of rights to run up, but what happens with them? Well, they just dissolve. And whoever, when the music stops, some people have chairs and some people don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very interesting. I think I can sense like the mind blown meme like going across the chat room with people thinking about this, and it makes a ton of sense. My question, James, is I'm sure you talk to people in college athletics. Is the president at Wazoo and Baylor and Texas Tech or wherever, are they thinking this way, do you think? Or are they going, hey, expanded playoff, baby, that's our life raft?
I can't speak for the president of some of those schools you just rattled off there. And by the way, and I wouldn't necessarily lump them all together because even there, I think their resources are not necessarily the same. Look, the way I think you have to look at this, if you're a fan of a school that is not necessarily among the highest in resources, particularly if you're not, obviously, again, the Big Ten and the SEC. Even if they've had success, even if they've been more successful than some of those other teams and some of those schools that are in those leagues. Okay. Well, if you've been more successful, maybe you end up getting them there eventually. If your team, your school, whatever, just isn't, and maybe they just haven't been competitive. Haven't been competitive in a while. Not regularly competing for championships in any sport, let alone football. And it's just not a thing. It's just not regularly a thing. You got to ask yourself that if we got to that point, if that's I'm going to say even doomsday, if that's just a scenario by which is possible, contractually speaking. All right, well then how do you best position yourself if the highest level of the sport becomes 2 super leagues of whatever size they end up being, and if you're not invited to one of them, you're not in the big kid party. What, you're going to fold up the football program? No. You just compete at the level at which you are already competing, whereby your resources allow you to. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all for some schools. I think some schools who are already basically perennial doormats in their leagues, if the very top get lopped off and put aside into super leagues, and then whatever's left over is now competing and playing for a championship at a new subdivision level to be named later, that subdivision will have a level of competition that's probably more level, more competitive, more fair for those schools, for those teams with much more like-minded resources, and that people will still watch those games too. Frankly, some of those schools will win more because they're not going to get their doors blown off, by some of the teams who just have beaten them for, 19 out of the last 20 years or something.
You and I have disagreed on that. You and I talked, by the way, I told everybody this a couple of nights ago. I love what our conversation was like. We didn't agree on everything. See, that's where for example, and I'm not saying they would be, but there is the possibility that Oregon, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Washington, those are 4, name maybe even a couple of others, are left out of the big boy party. I do think that would be devastating to them because of the resources they put in to be who they are right now and into the future. You don't agree with that?
If those entities you just mentioned specifically, David, they get left out only if 2 super leagues sit at 16, because we know who the 16 are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They only get left out if we're talking about, but I don't think we get, if we went to that point, if we got to the 2 conferences, have the postseason, and that's it, I don't think we sit at 16. I don't think we sit with 32. So I don't think those are the entities that we have to worry about being left out, personally. I think there are some other names you could mention in there, but I don't think those are 4 that would be at the top of the list to be left out. But hypothetically, just for the sake of your question, yeah, obviously it could have some negative consequences for some folks too. It has some negative consequences for some folks who right now are probably getting a sweetheart deal with their grant of rights as it is, even if it's not particularly good, relatively speaking, because what that entity, what that school brings to the table may be little to nothing by way of relative competitive success in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So depending on who it is, but you just happen to pick, probably of the remaining teams in the Pac-12 and Big 12, quite literally for arguably maybe the 4 biggest names. I'm with you. I hear you. Yes, hypothetically, if it was 2 conferences and it's the 32 teams that we know of, that wouldn't be great. You're absolutely right. But I think if we went to a SEC Big Ten playoff of the future, whether that's, again, 2026 or 2036, or, frankly, 2046, whatever it is, I think we could get there eventually. And I don't think I'm the only one, guys, because, again, everybody pulled up the old quote from the LSU president from 10-plus years ago, whether it was 09 or 11, saying, I think we're headed for two conferences, Fox and ESPN. So it's not like I'm talking way out of school and I'm going way out on a limb here. It's like, I think people have kind of seen where the money is going with all this, and it's getting to be so enormous. All right, well, if we get there, then, like I said, then I don't think we're talking about two conferences with 16 teams apiece is all. But if it did, then there'd be a whole lot of people left out. That's where I think you'd have greater pushback. But if the first decision is this is the system and structure, and coinciding with it, significant expansion of both leagues in order to be that much more inclusive and drive up the relative values of each of those leagues even more so, well, then, not for nothing, if it got to 24 apiece for the sake of argument, is anyone really, truly? And I know there's going to be some fans out there who are going to say, yeah, but I love my little school, and, once every 20 years we have a phenomenal season. That's great. But you're not moving the needle every week. And could you absolutely crown a national champion out of the top nearly 50 schools with the most resources on an annual basis? And would anyone say boo? Would anyone raise a hand and say, but wait, this undefeated team who only played competition, who didn't include all those top 50, this team is really the legitimate national champion? No. I know Central Florida. I know. I'm sure if I was saying this in Orlando today, someone would, curse me, from the beginning. But nevertheless, truly, you would be able to crown a legitimate national champion, and a whole lot of people will be watching if the top roughly 50 brands in college football and college sports as a whole, because I don't think this stops at football, by the way, guys, broke apart. And whether it's a formal breaking away or just using the playoff structure as the means by which to do this, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem, truly.
James,
other than, yes, if you're a fan of one of the smaller schools that gets left behind. But as I say, that's a relative term, because I think you're going to be more competitive playing people who have more light resources than you. Let's not kid ourselves. Oregon State and Washington State are not competing for a national championship every year, and they don't have anywhere near the same stratosphere of resources as Georgia and Alabama and Texas. No, they don't. And they're never going to.
Hey, James, I'm going to let Craig ask one more question, and then we've got a guest to get to, but we're going to push him back a couple of minutes. One, sure. Thanks for your time. A lot of people are listening to it. Craig, you have one more to finish it out.
Well, I would also say, James, it would suck for Team 51 and 52, and I would hate to see that, but life isn't fair. So, I think
exactly.
That's what I think everybody has a hard time imagining, where not everybody's got a fair shake, but that's life, so I'm with you there. I guess my last question here is just in terms of the playoff and the establishment and the timeline and all that gets kind of muddied in my head, but with the Pac-12's timing of their contract and the timing of a potential playoff decision, how does that kind of vibe with one another? Like if the playoff decision doesn't come within the next couple of years and the Pac-12 sitting here with this agreement coming up, how does that work?
Thank you. You've laid it out perfectly. That's the question for this conference. That is the question, which is what I was asking the commissioner last week at Pac-12 Media Day. I said, how is it that you're going to convey to Sankey and Warren that this conference is still worthy of postseason inclusion at all, and it's in their best interest to include them? And then when I spoke with them one-on-one, as many of the national guys did, and I cover, Oregon every day, but also the conference as a whole. And when I met with George again later that afternoon and started again with the same question, he said, well, let's talk about that. What's the first, under what kind of premise and what structure and system would there be, exclusion in the first place? And we talked about this, and I laid it out as I have with you guys here, verbatim, basically. Yeah. I said, George, you're a lawyer. This is politics. This is power. So they can now wait you out. And he goes, who's they? And I go, everyone. I go, it's not just Kevin and Greg. Everyone's grant of rights is longer than yours up. You just happen to be up first. Right now, you believe and is confident. And look, there's something to be said for this. Now, he was wrong when he was super confident in early June that he had nothing to worry about. As he told me, I had no concern at all about being poached by the Big Ten. End of the month, obviously, he was poached by the Big Ten. So be that, but take it for what it's worth. because of the meeting in Park City, which happened only about a week before being poached by the Big Ten, where all the commissioners got together, one of their meetings during the year, everybody came out of it more confident, basically because Kevin Warren had backed off of the automatic qualifier demand. Now, only he at that point knew it was in part because he knew he was going to be getting the LA schools. Having said that, he's clearly a pretty savvy guy. So he may have looked like he was making progress in June, make this move, and then say, well, now it doesn't serve me to make a decision. I can wait you out until August 2nd of 24 and let me see you 10 scramble a little bit. And what are you going to do? Because as confident as George Payalkov is that by the end of the calendar year, the entities, the 10 conferences in Notre Dame are going to agree on a playoff expanded format beginning in 2026, and that it's going to include access for everybody again. As confident as he is that's going to happen, and it very well may, it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in my heart of hearts that it best serves the two most powerful conferences to make a decision anytime before the end of the year. I don't think it serves them to include the Pac-12 and maybe others going forward regardless of when they make the decision. So to your point, your question, what are the timelines? Right now, you've got George Payalkov saying he's super confident it'll be done by the end of the year. At SEC Media Day, you heard Greg Sankey even say he was confident that they were going to be able to come to consensus, but then the landscape changed.
Yeah.
And we have to evaluate local needs and national needs and whether or not those intersect. So that's his words, not mine. I'm quoting him verbatim there. So, hey, we will see. Could it happen in the next 6 months and everybody sits in their respective corners and is happy again? Totally possible. In which case, then come the TV deals for the Pac-12 and the Big 12, and then we can all compare and who was going to poach who and who was lying and all the other stuff. And that'll be fun radio for everybody, too. Or they don't make a decision in the next 6 months. We head into the spring and the winter, and now the clock's really ticking, and now the heat's on. And who goes where?
James, great stuff, man. Thank you very much. A lot of different ways to look at this. As you know, back and forth. It's been one hell of a month, last 4 weeks or so with US, UCLA. You're right there at Oregon. We appreciate your time. I'm so glad we got you on. So glad I called you a couple of nights ago to kind of pick your brain and get your opinion. Not everybody agrees with a lot of things, but a lot of you are very impressed with what you heard, and that's why there's a chat room and or the text line if you want to respond. When we come back, John Machota, Oxnard, California, but we have a couple of other college football notes that we'll try to get to as well. I don't know how we're going to fit it in. Do we want to just move John back a day?
Well, it's kind of late. It's kind of late.
Okay. All right, you want to get to a couple of notes that you have, Craig?
Well, yeah, we can go ahead and get to a couple.
Just do this over the next 3 to 5 minutes, and we'll break and then come back with John.
All right. I think it's pretty major to mention, and yeah, thanks to James there for that conversation. That was very interesting. But the transfer window, the transfer talk, the limitations and everything that they were looking on throwing out there and voting on, and that would have been with the transfer window would have been established. You'd have the specific dates that would have been in place for where athletes can enter their name or do all that jazz. There was also though the big controversial talk about having no limits on transfers. Like you could, in theory, go anywhere you want every year. You could just go. And I hate that idea. I mean, I'm all for freedom of movement and everything, but let's have some loyalty, like just a little bit.
It's just greedy.
Yes, it is. It's so greedy and it's so selfish and it's so all of just the gross things, but I know that that's a lot of what other people lap up. I'm just never going to be that person, so I don't like the idea. But that's all off the table now, at least for the time being. That has been scrapped. They're not going to move forward with either of those concepts. So I had seen that just a little while ago, and we'll see where it goes from there. But as far as the transfer, unlimited transfers, that is not going to be passed anytime soon, and it's something that's going to need a little bit more work. So I did find that very interesting because you can only imagine what that concept would have been like if they would have implemented that, but now that also goes for transfer windows, and so we'll see kind of how they go back to the drawing board and what they come back with and whether that ultimately turns into something. I was on board with the transfer window just because I think it makes things a little bit more tidy and there's a little bit more order, and I understand people don't want order, but yeah, anyways.
Was there anything with Dennis Dodd's story you want to bring up?
Not enough for 2 minutes, no. So
okay, all right. Well, we'll get. I'm going to reach out to him, by the way, today on the show and see if we can get him on tomorrow with just anything possibly new to get his perspective. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. So I've told you a couple of different stories about Ideal MRI. From Dr. Rob Maxey, who's one of the partners at Ideal MRI, located in Waco in the Central Texas marketplace. And what they do is provide you a financial relief by also getting a relief by finding out what in the world is hurting you, whether it is a muscle or ligament or something else. He has now told us, and I've shared this with you, a couple of different stories about a woman who had a lady who had lumbar spine MRI, needed that. Her insurance had a $6,000 deductible. The hospital wanted to charge her $2,000. She found out about Ideal MRI. She called them. She paid $497 and saved $1,500. But even more than that, the insurance deductible, or the insurance that she was able to also get involved, she paid $230 rather than $2,000. The other story about a woman that was struggling, her insurance was making her go to a hospital for an MRI, would have cost her $1,600 for a knee MRI, including whatever the insurance was going to take care of. She was able to do that for $497 and have a world-class muscular skeletal radiologist read her exam and get it in a portal to her doctors. That is what Ideal MRI is doing, saving you hundreds and in a couple of cases more than $1,000 or so dollars and getting you the information you and your doctor need at idealmri.com.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Tom Albers, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If your financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Tom Albers, 4301 Lakeshore Drive, 254-776-7605. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like First Free Checking, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive. It's a staple of the Waco economy. And you're about to approach this time of the year where you have the holidays, special gifts. It's not that you don't have that every single day. What are some of the things you have coming up?
You know, we kind of call ourselves the wedding ring store. We do all of our own custom work in-house. I've got 2 expert jewelers on staff every day. We can make anything from scratch. We kind of pride ourselves. Probably 9 out of 10 every engagement ring we do is actually made custom to what the customer wants.
People look at that, oh my God, I can't afford it. I can't afford something like that. You've shown me examples that you could fit pretty much any budget.
It doesn't cost any more to custom make something. You still have gold, you still have diamonds, and you still have labor. Best thing about a custom piece is if you have any old jewelry or heirloom jewelry or something passed down from a grandma or somebody, we can take that jewelry and use it towards your wedding ring for the sentimental value, and then you've got the product, and then it's just a little bit of labor and a little bit of design on your part of what you actually want.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with John Machota of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
A lot of great opinions and feedback, not just with James Crepia and his opinion on college football in the future, but also just in general. Thank you very much for that, and the text line as well. We're now joined by John Machota. The Athletic covers the Cowboys in the NFL. John, thanks for your time. And Paul just told me during the commercial break there is some new news, I guess, on a new name to the Cowboys roster.
Yeah, John, they actually signed a free agent. What do you know?
Yeah, this isn't a huge surprise just because Anthony Barr is a guy that they have been pretty interested in going back to really the end of OTAs and minicamp. It was just about getting the contract at the right spot. I mean, it's only a few $1 million, it's a 1-year deal. So they had interest in him for a while. So it's not a huge surprise that they finally got it done. But, you know, Anthony Barr is a guy who he made the Pro Bowl 4 consecutive years early in his career. You know, he's a top 10 draft pick in 2014. And, you know, he played in Minnesota with George Edwards, who was, you know, a defensive coordinator for a while there with him, who's now, you know, coaching the linebackers and helping out on the defense with Dan Quinn here. So it makes a lot of sense from familiarity standpoint. Obviously, Mike McCarthy game planned against him a lot when he was up in Green Bay. And so this is one of those things where he's got a little bit of pass rush ability, but I think it's more so that kind of filling that Keanu Neal role of having another veteran that you can put out there as at linebacker, like Leighton Vander Esch type thing, just because Micah's not looked at as being a, you know, 100% linebacker all the time. They have, you know, plans of Micah rushing the passer quite a bit again this year. So they needed another veteran linebacker, and hey, the price was right. Not a major investment, but you know, it's a name that people know because, like I said, he made 4 Pro Bowls.
I think it's a brilliant long-term play by the Cowboys. They didn't really want him in the 2014 draft. They wanted him in 2022 when he's 8 years deep as a veteran, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, hey, believe me, if he was early in his career, he would command a lot more money than he would now. And so it's just one of those things where it's like the investment isn't that big, but it is one of those type of things that if this would have got done 1 year, a few $1 million back, you know, let's say in March or something, I think that people would view the Cowboys as having a better offseason because it's a name that they know. But that doesn't mean that he's going to come out here and have this major impact. It's yet to be determined. But it's a name that people know. So, you know, it's one of those things where there's some excitement over that. But when I look at that, I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, wide receiver is a bigger need. They need some probably help at offensive tackle depth. So linebacker wasn't the number one thing on my list of areas I thought they'd be filling. But like I said, I'd heard, you know, going back to the end of minicamp that they, you know, there were talks there and that they were just going to kind of see where things go. And that's the way it is in the NFL. There's tons of free agents that are out there, guys that, you know, names that people know, like Odell Beckham and T.Y. Hilton and Will Fuller. It's about where are they at injury-wise, you know, in terms of like their health. Are they ready to contribute right now? And then obviously the dollar amount's got to be right too. And that's why, you know, a lot of these guys, even though you know their names, aren't on teams right now.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's just funny. I remember all the the talk when he didn't become a Cowboy during the draft all those years ago, and it shows you what a small world. And yeah, don't burn bridges, right? Because it wasn't immediately when people might have wanted it back in 2014, but he eventually became a Cowboy. So that's very cool. I guess James Washington, the injury he suffered, the fractured foot. John, what can you tell us about just all of that and what that means ramifications-wise for the Cowboys?
Yeah, it sounds like, 6 to 10 weeks is pretty much the timeline there. It's a similar injury to what DeMarcus Lawrence had last year, and DeMarcus ended up missing 10 games. And so, James will miss some time. It's in the off season. In training camp right now. So I'm not saying he's going to necessarily miss, 6 to 10 game weeks. Maybe he misses, 4 to 6 game weeks or whatever. But the problem is that you didn't really get a lot of time out there to build any rapport with Dak Prescott because he had a walking boot on his left foot when we saw him at OTAs and minicamp, so he didn't do much there. And then he comes out here, and he's part of the 4 practices, the first 4 that weren't in full pads. And, he made some nice plays. And then you get the first full padded practice, and 1 hour into it, he lands awkwardly and breaks a bone in his right foot. And so, I don't know how big of an impact he was going to have, but just because Michael Gallup was unlikely to play week 1, it seems like Washington was going to be in the starting lineup. So now they got to find someone to kind of fill that role because they feel good about CeeDee Lamb. They certainly feel good about Jalen Tolbert being a number 2 or number 3 type guy. But this is where like having a Cedric Wilson, obviously, or an Amari Cooper would help a lot where you wouldn't be as concerned about the position. But because they don't have those guys, it makes you wonder, are they really going to stick with these young guys, which Jerry Jones says that he's fine with doing right now, that there isn't a sense of urgency. But I'll believe that as we get closer to the season because I could still see them, if not signing a veteran, going out and trading for somebody who, it's not going to be the biggest name guy out there. It's going to be a lower level receiver on a roster, maybe another team's 3 or 4 best receiver, and you'll give up maybe a 6th round pick, something like that. Or maybe they wait till when rosters, trim down a little bit more. But they want to give all these young guys on the roster every chance to trying to step into that role. I'll kind of believe it, though, as the season gets closer. I feel like as long as CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert are healthy, those are 2 that you put in the starting lineup there week 1. But they got to find that 3rd guy. As of right now, if they play tomorrow, I think the 3rd guy would be Noah Brown.
Okay, I'm going to admit this. When I heard that Paul mentioned Anthony Barr, going back to that, was being signed by the Cowboys, the first thing I thought of, he must be the biggest name, not fit or anything else that's available because – don't you think they fight with that a little bit, John, at times on who's going to give them the biggest oomph rather than who's the best player and fit, or am I just being stupid?
No. I'd probably have a little bit of an argument with you over that if it was, 27 or 8 other NFL franchises, but this one, I don't think you can rule that out. Like you feel like that's always in there. But I'll just say, I just don't think it's a major financial commitment. So if it doesn't work out, right, I don't think it really hurts you too much. But, yeah, I don't think that bothers them. It certainly doesn't bother the man in charge because he loves anything. Heck, I remember back a couple of years ago when that Earl Thomas talk wouldn't go away. Everybody else in the organization was like, yeah, we've moved on. That's not going to happen. But Jerry wanted to just keep a crack in the door there anytime you bring it up just because he knew it would keep the Cowboys in the conversation whenever Earl Thomas was being talked about, even though it was never going to happen. So, I'm sure that Jerry doesn't mind that fans know who Anthony Barr is and that he's made Pro Bowls. That's for sure.
Yeah. John, do you think he is digging his heels too far in on this young wide receiver thing, or is that just posturing right now?
I think it's a lot of posturing. Don't get me wrong. You want to get your younger guys snaps, and it's, preseason and, hey, maybe you end up developing a guy. I'll tell you a guy that has really caught my eye early on is this Dennis Houston, who's just an undrafted guy they signed after the draft this past year. And he's just a guy that you can tell that, heck, talking to CeeDee Lamb, he's one of the first names CeeDee mentioned in terms of the younger receivers that have kind of caught his eye. And, it's like Dennis Houston. How many people are going to really know much about a guy from, Western Illinois? But you see him working more and more with the ones to try and get in there. And maybe you find an undrafted guy that I'm not saying is going to be your 2 or 3 once Michael Gallup comes back or James Washington, but maybe he's your 4. Maybe it's somebody that, TJ Vasher or somebody like that. That's all fine, and that's good for right now. And hey, talking to Dak and Zeke, it certainly doesn't sound like the plan is for their starters to play very much in the preseason. So it's not like they have to really worry about it right now. But I feel like as we get closer to that week 1 game, if they don't have a guy or two they feel really comfortable about, I think they'd probably go out and add a veteran in some way. I mean, heck, the one that everyone's talking about out here is that, CeeDee Lamb's the only one on this roster who's cut an NFL touchdown pass. I mean, Noah Brown's been in the league since 2017, but he's had a little over 400 receiving yards during that entire time. He's dealt with injuries, and he's been more of a blocking wide receiver. So it's just interesting the way you go from being like an embarrassment of riches for a couple years at wide receiver to now it's one of the thinnest positions on the team.
John, I know that he can't afford to like have another slip up and get into trouble or anything like that, but seeing the comment from Jerry the other day, is it pretty much water under the bridge for Kelvin Joseph and just kind of back to business as usual?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like Jerry's comments were pretty similar to other players that have gotten in trouble before. So I feel like that's pretty much status quo for what he says in terms of giving players second chances on the field, and how that, for them to get that second chance, they have to play well, but then also stay out of trouble off the field. So with Jerry, I think you could say that, but with the league, I don't, this is far from over. I don't see how you have video of a vehicle where gunshots are fired out of them. The player lawyer said that player was in the vehicle, even though they did not shoot the gun. And someone lost their life. I find it hard to believe the NFL is going to look at that and say, nope, we're good here. Nothing. I find it hard to believe there's not some type of punishment coming from the league. But Jerry's been asked about it multiple times in the last couple of days, and he says that he hasn't heard anything from the league. But it's also one of those things where even if he had, I don't think Jerry wants to say if he had or not. I don't think he wants to really be involved with that one way or the other. But when you deal with somebody losing their life, I mean, heck, just, gunshots being fired from a vehicle into a crowd of people, it's bad enough. And then someone loses their life. I just find it hard to believe the NFL is just going to be like, nah, we're good. We're just, make sure he doesn't get in any more trouble and let's move on. That doesn't seem the way like the NFL has been running since I've been covering the league.
John, thank you. Enjoy it. I know you will, in Oxnard in the 60-degree range somewhere, I'm sure, as we hit yet another 100. But that's just the way life is. Thank you, John Machota. TheAthletic.com covers the Cowboys in the NFL. Garrett, I just sent you a link to a tweet. We have to show this. You have fans, media, whoever from the Big 12 and the Pac-12 kind of like snipping at each other. And so then there was an article written about attendance, capacity, et cetera, whatever, by someone we've brought up on this show, someone we've had on this show, in John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury newspaper.
Yes, his tweet was 2019 average attendance, Pac-12 minus the LA schools, 44,704. Okay, 44,704.
And we're going to put the graphic up in a second when you're done with his first tweet. No, Garrett, wait, please.
So, again, a 2019 average attendance, Pac-12 without the LA schools, 44,704. Big 12 without OU and UT, 49,378. And he says, not a significant difference, plenty of empty seats in both leagues. That was John Wilner's tweet.
All right, so this is, I don't know if this is the new Big 12. Brett Yormark?
It's continuing Big 12 programs and continuing
No, I'm
Pac-12.
talking about who put this out.
Who put this out? I bet you. I mean, look, I don't know. Who knows? But
so then the Big 12 responded to that with this graphic of the percentages of each stadium and how they were compared to capacity, compared to ticket sales of whatever attendance. And you can see that Texas Tech just under 90%, and I'm sure this year that changes because of all the excitement with the incoming with Joey McGuire, not incoming, but there. Kansas lagging behind. Yes, they have struggled in many ways. If basketball would be a different story. And then our right part of the column is the Pac-12, continuing Pac-12 program. And listen, they've got some bigger stadiums in certain ways, but there's the percentages through the top 5, near 90% or better. And then after that, they're in the 60s and 70s. Is this what we're going to get to now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a freaking conference coming out and straight up like throwing shade at a Pac-12 reporter. So yeah, like, and I'm all for it if they got the numbers. I think the thing that you need to mention is that like what the graphic shows is that the top 7 of these 8 remaining schools in the Big 12 all have higher percentage of capacity season attendance than everybody but 4 schools in the remaining Pac-12. I mean, Baylor, K-State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia, and Texas Tech all have 88% or more. And Kansas is well low, but they're the worst program in the country basically the last 5 years, and they're at 67%. Whereas over in the Pac-12, you've got Utah and you've got Oregon, and Utah's got they got the best number of anybody, but Utah, Oregon, Colorado, Washington, they all have very good numbers, 97% or higher. But yeah, then there's Washington State, Arizona State, Oregon State, Stanford, Arizona, and California would all be behind everybody in the Big 12, save for Kansas, who would have a number pretty close in line to Cal, which is, man, does that tell you the apathy out there? The big Bay Area market, huh? They got barely above Kansas in terms of attendance at Cal. So there's your Cal argument right there, and why people mention them and just sort of the apathy and whether or not they even care to be a part of whatever comes next. That's why.
But, okay, here's also what John Wilner said, and I know that there's a lot of people after him and people are after others as well, and there's some of them are going back after their own people. He said, not a significant difference. Plenty of empty seats in both leagues.
No, not really.
Not really. And here's the other thing. Not a significant difference. Now, I know TV dollars and butts and seat dollars are different, but we've seen a lot of TV metrics that show there's not a big difference between watching Oregon and watching TCU on television. There's different things that affect that. So you can't kind of use these things aren't a significant difference argument 2 different ways. I mean, like television, like I've said, there's a lot of ghost numbers in there, and there are also, look, when you're talking about, okay, if Oregon gets 2.5 million and Baylor gets 2.2, that's 300,000 people. Yeah, that's a lot of people, but what channel were they each on? What time were they each on? And so Baylor getting 2.3 on a lesser channel than Oregon getting 2.5 might mean Baylor is actually a stronger draw.
Well, and I think also when you...
I'm just typing hypotheticals.
Yeah, and I also think that it's not meant to be like some serious breakdown. Like, let's have a conversation about why this graphic is correct or not. Like, I mean, I think it's just fun shade being thrown by the Big 12 Conference, and I also think it is showing a point. Like I said, 7 of 8 teams have 88% or higher football season attendance. For the Pac-12, that is 5 of 10. So 7 out of 8 or 5 out of 10, that...
And the 8 team is abjectly the worst team in college football.
And it's the worst team in college football. They're the outlier at 67.4%, which is barely below Cal. So, I mean, I think that's what he's kind of is being shown in that, and I'm sure there's another way to interpret it, but when you're talking about not that much of a difference or it's plenty of empty seats or whatever, I think when the Big 12 goes plenty of empty seats, 7 of our 8 teams are 88% or higher attendance. That's not a ton of empty seats, quite frankly, versus, the comparison model.
Yeah, Utah, obviously, with a great percentage. Baylor just over 100% as well. This was the graphic put out by the Big 12. Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, all of them in the same area, or some Oregon or Colorado, Washington, a little higher. And so it just depends on how you look at it. But you look at not only just the capacity and also the percentage, but look at also the stadiums. Other than Washington, nobody else is close. Washington with a stadium of 70,000, right? No one else is close to that when it comes to capacity of your stadium. Arizona State, 64,000, of what was also a pro stadium at some point for a long time. And then there's some that are at 60, 61. There's a lot of similarities when it comes to the size of the stadiums of these teams that are on this graphic, other than the 2 or 3, including Washington at the very top.
Yeah, it's almost like they're pretty similar.
Yeah, that's what I.
It's almost like there's not really a great argument one way or the other. It's almost like the timing matters, and it's almost like, it just depends on your vantage point. I don't know how you're sitting there screaming to the hilltops of the Pac-12's in a better vantage point right now. I don't know how you make that argument, but I can see where you could say, hey, it's not like the Big 12's just sitting pretty and on cloud 9 and nothing's going to go wrong for them either. I mean, there's still plenty of pitfalls potentially in their pathway. But I think if we're just weighing one versus the other, yeah, the Big 12's in a stronger position, absolutely. But I don't think it's so significant that, you can't make some other arguments surrounding, the power of one or how much farther apart they are or what have you. But I do think I do think the PR side of things, this was a win for the Big 12 to have whoever's running their Twitter account come out with these numbers and just kind of throw it out there. I think that's fun, and part of the fun of realignment is you get weird things like that.
It's interesting, though, two conferences. And, again, Wilner writing for covering the Pac-12, but that the Big 12 would respond to that. And I think just both conferences are kind of fed up, and this is where we are, and that's fine with me as well. Could he be right with part of what he said? Yes. But is he also kind of wrong? Yes. And both sides can have an argument there. Thanks for your time to everybody. No Paul top 5 today. He pushed it back because of that. We have more to get to tomorrow, including digging into Dennis Dodd and his latest column with CBSSports.com, among whatever changes overnight for Faith, Emery, Levi, Garrett, Paul, Craig. What?
Which Dennis Dodd, the reason why that's of interest is not just because he's a college football writer, but because his piece was on the Big Ten not looking at the Pac-12 schools any longer, which we didn't talk about.
A week after he had one that said they were.
Yes, so exactly. Take that for what it is, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
To those for the 810 that text me and Paul and us on the text line, I'll be in touch with you sometime this evening to just kind of share some information. Appreciate you reaching out to us as well. Good night, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833-IDEAL-MRI.